TitleMatchNetwork.com.
Welcome to another edition of the RF Video Shoot Interview Series. Today we're joined by a true legend in the sport of professional wrestling. Do you want to be known as Jesse the Body Ventura?
No, I prefer Governor Ventura.
Okay.
I've been out of wrestling for 22 years now.
Exactly. So my very first question to you, Jesse, would be, were you a wrestling fan growing up?
Sure. Oh, absolutely. In fact, I ended up wrestling some of the wrestlers I grew up being a fan of. The Crusher,
right?
Mad Dog. All of those guys were a couple generations in front of me and at the twilight of their career. And it was always bizarre to me when I'd step into the ring with the Crush, because I remember him as a kid. I remember buying a ticket. They used to have a deal where in Minnesota where if you bought one seat, you'd get the one next to it free.
That's a great gimmick.
Yeah, they do that all that periodically. So a neighborhood friend of mine, a kid friend of mine, we would ride the bus and we'd buy one ticket and both of us could go for the price of one ticket and we'd split that one ticket. So yeah, I was a wrestling fan in my youth, but then as I got older and of course joined the Navy and all that, then it disappeared for a while until Superstar Graham came along.
Right.
He was my inspiration. When I saw him, I thought I want to do what he does. And that happened actually when I came home on leave, my last leave of the Navy.
So you grew up and you enjoyed watching the business. Who are some of your favorite guys? Superstar Billy Graham, would you consider?
No, Superstar was later.
Okay.
When I grew up, it was the Crusher and Mad Dog, and I was AWA because I grew up in Minnesota. Larry Hennig and Harley Race were wrestling then, and the guy who trained me, Eddie Sharkey.
Right.
He wrestled back then. So those were probably the main.
At what age did you say, all right, I want to get into the business, I need to...
The age? It happened when I got back from the Navy, so I would have been, 23, I'm guessing, 23 or 24. The way that happened, I went to junior college for 1 year. I was on the GI Bill.
Okay.
And when you're on the GI Bill, you don't really have to name a major or nothing right away. And my first year at college, I took theater. And I really enjoyed theater. I actually did Aristophanes the Birds in a college play. And then it dawned on me that this would be, I had intentions coming out of the Navy to try to play pro football. And then I thought, I love theater so much, and I thought, wrestling would be better because it combines both athleticism and theater. So I could kill two birds with one stone if you looked at it that way. It had theater with the athleticism. And so I started training hard, and then there was a little ad in the paper one day, learn to be a pro wrestler at the 7th Street Gym on 7th and Hennepin, and I went down there and met Eddie Sharkey, and he trained me for 7 months, and the rest is history.
What are your memories of Eddie Sharkey?
Good, solid wrestler, knew the business well. He trained a lot of great wrestlers, Bob Backlund, me, the Road Warriors. I'm trying to think who else Eddie put out there, but Eddie had a good group of wrestlers that he trained and put in the business. And at that time, Eddie had a huge fallout with Verne.
Right.
And the word was anyone that Eddie trained would never work for Verne. I think I was the first wrestler who Eddie trained that worked for Verne.
Who would you consider your mentor early on? Would it be Eddie?
My mentor?
Yeah.
No, Eddie just trained me. I mean, mentor in the business?
Who pretty much took you under the wing and maybe taught you the ropes?
Nobody.
Also?
Jerry Oats.
Jerry Oats?
Jerry Oats did, down in Kansas City. Jerry had been wrestling a number of years. He was there with his brother Ted. And I would say that Jerry Oats was probably my guardian angel, my rookie year of wrestling. He really smartened me up.
I was going to ask you, it was one of the questions.
To promotions and how it worked. Naturally I was smartened up when I learned to wrestle. But Jerry Oats would have been the wrestler in the business that really took me under his wing in Kansas City. I was there for the first 6 months of my career. And then, of course, I went to Portland, Oregon. And I had the good fortune to work for a terrific promoter there named Don Owen.
Right. I'm going to ask you all about this.
Yeah, and then and I was married to Jimmy Snuka for about 2 years. And when I say that, I mean we wrestled each other. And there wasn't a better guy to wrestle and get good with because Jimmy Snuka is one of the best performers there ever was.
When you were training early on, for you, what was harder? Was it learning how to bump or was it the psychology?
No, the psychology was easy. I never liked the bumps. That's why I learned quick that if you use the right psychology, you can eliminate a lot of the bumps.
Right.
And I'm glad today because my body held up pretty well, doing it that way. It was often referred to as walking and talking.
Right.
Why do you think I used to wear 6 earrings into the ring? The bell would ring, and I remember there were times I'd wrestle Tito Santana, and the announcer would say 5 minutes gone, and we hadn't even touched each other yet because I was still getting out of wardrobe.
Right, right.
You know, I knew how to perform in front, and yet I had the crowd up and down twice, standing and back in their seats booing, and we hadn't even touched each other.
It's not like that anymore, but
No,
we'll get into the WWF.
the business has changed a great deal since I left it.
100%. I guess how much was wrestling kayfabe to you when you were training? I mean,
None.
obviously they didn't. Okay.
Eddie smartened me up the first day that I handed him a check, basically. And what's wrong with that?
Right.
You're learning how to work, you know, and all that. So no, there was no big kayfabe done with Eddie or anything like that at all.
Memories of your very first match.
First match was against Omar Atlas. Last match was against Tony Atlas.
Wow, there you
I
go.
started with an Atlas and finished with an Atlas. My real memories were, I wrestled Omar in Wichita, Kansas. Bob Geigel was the promoter. He came up to me that night and he looked at me and says, "Kid, you know nobody wins their first match." And I said, "I understand." He turned to Omar. He said, "Omar," he said, "if the match goes good, have him throw you out over the top rope and get disqualified." He said, "if the match sucks, hit him with 2 drop kicks and cover him." So it was Omar's call. We went out there, my first match, and apparently I did such a good match, and Omar was such a great professional, he whispered to me, "Throw me over the top, kid." So he could have pinned me.
Right.
He could have, but he saw that I had something, even that first night. And so later on, I paid Omar back. When I became an announcer for the WWF, occasionally they would use Omar as a job guy,
Right.
and I always put him over strong, even when he'd lose.
Right, that's awesome.
You know, so I had my own way of paying Omar back for, you know, the fact that he could have pinned me right in the ring, but he chose not to. He let me, and back those days, over the top was a disqualification,
Right.
where you kept your heat, and he called it, throw me over the top.
What are your memories of working with Bob Geigel?
Geigel, I liked Geigel. Geigel was a good man. He was a solid amateur, University of Iowa. He was always pretty straightforward with me. And in fact, Bob was there when I was inducted into the Wrestling Hall of Fame in Iowa.
Right.
You know, which is the Shooter Hall of Fame. And I'm not a shooter.
Well, Bob had a reputation of being cheap. Do you think that is true, or?
Cheap? I don't think it was necessarily he was cheap. I just think Kansas City never drew many crowds. I mean, you can't pay people big money if there's not keisters in the seats. You know, in Kansas City, yeah, you're right. My entire first 6 months in Kansas City in 1975, I never saw triple figures. I never made over $100.
Wow.
My biggest payoff was $90. But then again, back then $90 went a lot farther than it does today.
Yeah.
But it still wasn't a lot.
How many days a week did you work back then for that territory?
In KC,
Yeah.
as much as I could, because I was a beginner coming up, and the only way you get experience is to wrestle.
Oh.
In fact, they brought me down there and they sat me there 2 weeks, and I never worked. The only reason I worked was Lord Alfred Hayes was leaving, and he wanted the weekend off, and he didn't want to make this trip to Wichita, so I replaced Lord Alfred Hayes on those 3 cards, and that's what springboarded me into the business. And after the first night, Bob Geigel came up to me after my first match with Omar, and he said to me, "Kid, stay in this business. You're going to make a lot of money someday." So Bob Geigel saw it the first day that I had apparently the attitude, persona, a mystique.
Right.
That he could tell. He said, "Stick out in this business because," he says, "someday you're going to make a lot of money."
So how long did you work for Geigel for?
6 months.
6 months?
Yeah, then they sent me out to Don Owen at Portland, Oregon, and here's a great story there. My first match in Portland, I made $100. And I was in the second bout. I was in heaven when I came home to my wife that night. I said, "My God, I made $100 tonight," because I had never seen $100 in 6 months in Kansas City. So, needless to say, Portland was a step upward.
Now, before you
And
went
in
to...
fact, Owen put it all onto me. I beat Snuka for the Northwest Heavyweight Championship, and I only had 9 months in the business. Can you imagine that? That Don Owen made his top moneymaker was a kid who didn't even have 1 year of experience in the business.
So he saw the potential in you, obviously.
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, he got cold feet the night Jimmy was supposed to drop the strap to me.
Right.
And Jimmy was the one. He said, "No, bro." He said, "I'm dropping the title to the kid today," because Jimmy knew. Jimmy was a businessman, and he knew he could make more money trying to get the title from
Chasing
me
the belt, yeah.
than he could having it.
Right.
And so Jimmy made the call really. Snuka, he said, I'm dropping the strap to the kid tonight. So it shows you what a businessman Jimmy was. He didn't care about the tight belts. He cared about the wallet.
Right.
And that's what it's all about.
What are your memories of working with Jimmy?
Phenomenal. He is one of the most phenomenal athletes in anything that I've ever seen. I remember one time I was supposed to beat him by backdropping him over the top rope, and he said, make sure, bro, give me a big boost. Well, as I boosted him, I spun around because I had to watch it. He never touched a rope. Went all the way over the top, and it was in Salem, and there was a drop. I would say he came down from at least 12 feet to the floor. He was unbelievable. And I kept telling him, Jimmy, you don't belong here. Get to New York.
Right.
Get to where the money is, and he eventually did.
What are your initial impressions about Don Owens?
Great old guy. Very much respect for Don. Don was a wonderful guy to work for. Yeah, no problem there. You know, it was his family run because his brother Elton ran the lower towns and all that. But it was a nice little operation. It was a great place to really, how would you say, craft your
skills.
Right. Yeah, hone your skills out there before you went to a major territory.
Plus, you had TV and all that, so
Sure.
you were able to work TV. And
Get this, when they were first putting me over out there, they wouldn't let me talk. And what was my best forte in the end? Talking.
Without a doubt. Well, I was going to ask you.
But they wouldn't let me talk. I was teamed with Bull Ramos, and Ramos used to do all the talking, and I'd just stand there and pose.
I was going to ask you your memories of teaming with Bull Ramos.
He was a solid performer. You know, for a big man like him, he could move very well and took good bumps, and you know.
Okay. Buddy Rose, also another name of the territory. Memories of working with Buddy.
Yeah, Buddy came in, Paul Pershman, and Buddy was a good partner also in the ring. You know, I did not associate with wrestlers very much out of the ring. Because I just didn't. I was married, and I didn't want to jeopardize my marriage in any way, shape, or form. I'm still married today after 37 years. How many pro wrestlers can say they're on their first wife after 37 years? There's a reason for that.
The business corrupts.
Well, I used to stay in my room. I didn't drink, and I didn't go to the bars.
Right.
I have the background of being a Navy SEAL, and that come into play. Because you're taught there to make sure you can get the operation done in the most efficient manner possible, and you don't put yourself in unneeded danger if you don't want to. It's like the old cliche: if you come up to a Y in the road, and one side of the road is dark, dismal, and the other's well lit, which way should you go? You should go to the well lit side, because chances are you won't get in trouble on that side. If you go to the other side of the road or the other way, you could. That's what it's all about.
Now, you talked a little bit earlier on about Billy Graham being a huge influence to your career and your personality in the ring and outside the ring. Well, how did you come in contact with Billy Graham?
7th Street Gym one day. It was the day after I dyed my hair blonde. I walked in on a Saturday morning, and Leroy Schrant, who owned it, I walked in. He said, "Hey, your hero's here in the back working out." And I looked at him and said, "Bullshit." And I turned and looked around the corner, and Graham was back there doing lat pull-downs. I quick got dressed in my workout gear to get out there so I could meet him. And Billy was great to me. He told me that you got to go out, because I hadn't even gone anywhere yet.
Right.
He said, you got to go out, you got to go to a small territory first. He said, that's where you got to learn. And then he said, maybe then later you can go to the AWA or the WWF. Or at that time it was the WWF.
Then senior.
Yeah, there was 3 W's to it before the F.
As far as your name, Jesse Ventura, who developed that? How did you come up with it? That was all you? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember how you came up with the name?
Yeah, I always loved the name Jesse. It gives you good fortune to be able to name yourself. You know, your parents name you. You don't have any say in it. Well, I got the ability to name myself. And I love the name Jesse, and I wanted to be at first I was surfer Jesse Ventura. And I wanted to be a surfer, blonde hair, from California. So I pulled out a California map, and I started matching Jesse up, and all of a sudden, Ventura, California, Jesse Ventura, and boom, the light went off. I said, that's who I'm going to be, Jesse Ventura.
Memories of Roddy Piper from the Don Owens era.
Roddy wasn't there when I was there.
He wasn't there? Okay, after? Okay.
I never met Roddy until New York.
Okay.
Roddy wasn't there when I was there.
Okay. How did you develop your promo skills? Obviously, you're known for that.
I don't know. They just came natural.
A lot of guys we talk to, they talk about looking at the mirror and practicing and
No, I didn't
car
have to
rides.
do that.
And, no,
I didn't have to do that.
hand you the mic. And,
Although I did used to, me and my friend in college, he taped all Graham's interviews, and we used to drive around in the car and listen to him on a cassette.
right?
Every Saturday when Graham did an interview, we'd have it taped, and then I'd listen to them. So I guess listening to Billy Graham, Superstar, was probably the way I honed it. And then when I did get to Minneapolis, Verne Gagne came up to me. He had just lost Graham to New York.
Right.
And Verne came up to me when he hired me, and he said to me exactly, he said, "Can you do Superstar Billy Graham?" I said, "Absolutely." He said, "That's what I want." I said, "Okay." Verne actually named me the body.
We'll talk all about that. Before you came to AWA in Minnesota, you also got to work a little bit with Rocky Johnson too, right? Was he in Portland when you were there?
No, I worked with Rocky in St. Louis.
In St. Louis? Okay. What are your memories of Rocky?
Just that he was a good performer and a professional, really. I mean, I didn't know Rocky well, but obviously, I'll tell you this, he trained his son correct, because The Rock has always been very, how would you say it, respectful.
Right.
Whenever he's a big movie star now, and whenever he comes through the Twin Cities, he always takes time, if he does an interview, say hi to, if anybody runs into Jesse Ventura, and give him my best.
How long were you in Don Owens territory for Portland?
2.5 years.
2.5 years?
Then I went to Hawaii for 7 months or 9 months, something like that, when Ed Francis opened it up, and then I came back to Portland again. Hawaii was really, though, more like a working vacation and get a chance to live in Hawaii.
Right, without a doubt. What are some other memories stick out for you for working for Don Owens as far as that territory goes? Anything else special?
Not really. Well, yeah, I guess the biggest memory I had is Don worked me harder than anyone ever did in the business. I wrestled 63 consecutive nights in there once, without a day off. Crazy, huh?
That is great.
63 consecutive nights in a row.
What was he drawing?
And there's guys that could beat that, I'm sure. I'm probably a low. But I mean, you tell people that don't know anything about wrestling that you work 63 nights in a row, and they think, "Oh my God, that's insane." And it was.
Without a doubt, especially back then. Was he drawing well houses?
Oh God, yes.
Big houses?
Oh yeah, for that era time, absolutely. We were selling out a lot.
How did you wind up working for AWA? And I consider that your big break in the business.
How did I do it? I had come home, I had quit the business. I had actually saved up enough money in Portland that I decided I was going to quit the business and open up my own weightlifting gym. So I opened up a gym, and Snuka left Don to go to Carolina, I think.
Right.
Don called me up and said, "If I fly you out, will you come out and work for me for 2 weeks?" And I said, "Sure, I'd love to, because it would help supplement my gym. I'll go out there for 2 weeks." And he said, "Well, I need you to do promos." And I said, "Well, you know the relationship with Verne. I'm an Eddie Sharkey trained guy." He says, "Don't worry about that. I'll smooth it with Verne. I'll call you back in an hour." So he called me back in an hour. He said, "You're all set. Go down to Verne Gagne on Saturday and cut a promo and ship it out to me." Because, you know, they wanted to preview and give the people in Portland, even though they all still remembered me, they wanted to promo me for a week or two before I came in. Because I was going to go against Buddy, my former partner.
Right.
It was me against Rose. And so I went down and I did, and I got down there, I sat around, Verne was doing his AWA, and finally they took a break at lunch, and that's when he sent me out with Gene Okerlund, and we clicked immediately. It was like bread and butter. Gene Okerlund, Mean Gene, and I. In fact, I'm who named him Mean Gene, you know.
I did not know that.
Oh yeah, I called him Mean Gene the hot air machine.
It just stuck.
And it stuck. The Mean Gene did, not the final part. But and so I got out with Gene, and Verne came up, and we reviewed it, and I said, "I know what I got to say. I'm going against Buddy Rose, da-da-da," and we cued Gene in. Gene did his typical great professional lead-in. Well, I happened to notice Verne was sitting at the table with his pencil, and he has glasses on doing booking, and I started in, talking about Buddy Rose, and I noticed out of my peripheral vision, all of a sudden Verne stopped writing. He took his glasses off and set them on the table, and he leaned back in his chair, and then he just listened. And so I did the interview. I thanked everyone. I got the thing, the tape, got it off to Don, and went off and did that. But they asked me before I left, they said, "Could you please bring the tape back?" Because I guess they lose them all the time, and they're pretty expensive at that time.
Right.
So I said, "Sure." So I brought the tape back with me, and I went up to the Verne's office when I returned, and Verne wasn't there, but Carbo was. and the late Wally Carbo. And so I walked in and I told the receptionist, look, I have to return this tape, blah, 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 blah. And Wally went, oh, Jesse, come on in. Pulled me in the back. All of a sudden, they're treating me like, I'm looking around to see, is he talking to me?
Right.
And he shows me all over the office. He says, what are you doing now? And I said, nothing, I quit. You quit? I said, yeah. I said, I just went back to work for Don. I said, I got my gym in North Minneapolis, and I said, I'm concentrating on building up a weightlifting gym. And he goes, well, he said, look it. He said, would you be willing to work for us part-time? And I thought, this is interesting. I'm a Sharky guy, and he's asking me to work part-time. And I said, sure, because I thought, again, well, if I can work off and on, it'll help build my gym up. But I got clear with him right away. I said, well, look, if you think that I'm going to do jobs on TV, no. I said, I'm not a jobber. I will not do a job on TV. I told him that right away because Geigel told me that. When I left Kansas City, Geigel said to me, from this point on, you don't ever do another job on television. And I said, good enough. And I took that. So I told Collie, I said, I'm not going to do jobs on TV. He said, no. But like if we need somebody in Winnipeg or we need somebody, da-da-da. He said, you'll do a job in a house show, won't you? I said, of course. But I said, I won't do one on television, because if you do one on television in those days, well, you're then cast for life.
Right.
And so then I went back to my gym, and later the next day the phone rang. It was Verne. I pick up the phone. Jesse Ventura, yeah, you got him. This Verne Gagne. Almost dropped the phone. Yeah, Verne, what can I do for you? He said, Wally talked to you about working here? I said, yeah, Wally talked to me a little bit about working part-time here and there if you need it. Verne goes, God damn it. He goes, what's the matter with Wally? He says, I want you full-time. I almost fell over my chair. You do? Yes. Can you be at TV on Saturday? I'm going to give you a push. Okay. So I went down Saturday. Verne says, we got to think of a name for you, Jesse Ventura. And then all of a sudden he goes, how about Jesse the Body Ventura? I said, fine, you're the boss. That's what we'll go with.
Wow.
So that's where Jesse the Body came from.
What were your initial impressions of Verne Gagne?
Verne is, he was a dictator. He was a very hard, harsh man to work with. I respected him, but at the same time, I thought he was ridiculous that he would treat complete strangers worse or better than he would his own talent that made him money. I remember one time me and Adrian had sold out Denver 3 times in a row, and some little piddly thing didn't go right in the match, and Verne came in and screamed and hollered at us when we were in the shower. When he left, I turned to Adrian and I said, geez, Adrian, wasn't this the 3rd sellout in a row? Adrian goes, yeah. I said, God, wouldn't you think he'd come in and say to us, hey, great job, guys. 3 sellouts in a row. Keep up the good work. But Verne wasn't that way. He wasn't the type of guy who would compliment you for anything. He would just holler at you all the time.
Now, when you first went to AWA, obviously he said he had a big spot for you and a push. Did he promise you anything as far as where he was going to go with you?
No.
Or just giving you a big push and
Yep.
seeing where it goes?
Yep, that's all I wanted. I'll make my own money. I'll draw my own crowds. Just give me the chance.
Who were some of the early programs you were involved with in
God,
AWA?
I can't remember.
Well, you worked with Adrian Adonis.
Well, I worked single for a while, and then Adrian came in, and Verne right away saw these 2 young guys. Let's put them together. And me and Adrian then became, because I was from San Diego, or announced myself I was from Minneapolis, but they didn't dare have me be a villain from Minneapolis. So I was always from San Diego, and Adrian, of course, was from Buffalo originally, but New York City.
Right.
So Adrian and I came up with the East-West connection.
I remember.
You're the East Coast, I'm the West Coast. Let's call ourselves the East-West connection.
What are your memories of Adrian? Because to me, he was one of the best workers out there.
Oh, Adrian was phenomenal. Adrian was a great partner in the ring. He could work. He had the timing. He could talk. Adrian had the whole package. And I kept him in shape. My influence on Adrian was making him go to the gym, because you noticed when he split with me, all of a sudden he gained about 80 pounds.
Right. What do you
But
think?
then again, he became his idol. Adrian's idol was Dr. Jerry Graham.
Right.
And Dr. Jerry Graham wasn't exactly slim and trim.
What made Adrian so good?
He was like me. He was a natural, I think. Adrian was very good. He was a good bump man. Plus, I didn't like to take bumps, so it was good to give me a bump man.
Right.
And I was probably the better talker of the 2.
Without a doubt.
So we filled in the gaps. I didn't like to take bumps, and I was a better talker, and so it worked good that way.
We did an interview about, 6 months ago, and I forgot who it was, somebody, and they said, yeah, Jesse was hard to work with in the ring. He never really liked to take bumps, and he didn't sell very well. What do you say to that?
I sold very well.
Okay.
I was never hard to work with in the ring.
Right.
Are you kidding me?
I don't even remember.
Whoever would say that never worked with me very much because I was a night. I never potatoed nobody. I was a night off just because I took bumps when they meant something. A lot of guys take bumps for the sake of bumps. I don't think that's good either. I took them when they meant something. But on purpose I didn't like taking them because I knew that it would destroy my body because of the amount you worked. And if you could get away, if you could have a successful match without bumps, that's even better. And that was I strived for that.
Right. Okay. What do you
Hard
remember
to work with. I'd like to know who said that. That was easy to work with. Me and Tito wouldn't even touch each other for 8 minutes, and we'd have the crowd up and down out of their chairs 3 times screaming. I think that was someone who was jealous of me.
Probably. What do you remember about Bobby Heenan as your manager when they put Bobby with you?
Bobby never really was my manager that much. Bobby did it off and on with me, but he truly was never my manager. Fred Blassie was my manager out in New York the first time. Heenan was a manager by convenience. They'd throw him with me and Adrian, I guess, just to fill up a slot or, whatever it was. But
what are your memories of Bobby outside the ring?
Oh, Bobby was he was a professional. Loved the business. Everybody did.
Okay. Paul Ellering, you worked a little bit, you feuded with Paul, I believe, in AWF.
Yeah, Ellerat.
What are your memories of working with Paul Ellering?
Wonderful guy, but very naive. He didn't even smarten up his brother, and his brother damn near killed me, wanted to kill me one night. And I told Paul the next day, will you smarten up your brother? I don't want to have to hit him. There was the weightlifting thing. After I did Paul in, his brother jumped in the ring.
Wow.
And his brother wasn't smart. And I could tell by his eyes. He was going to kill me. He thought I hurt his brother. And I said, smarten your brother up, so that he doesn't think that I'm actually hurting you. It's a business. This ain't life or death. I'd already seen life and death in the SEALs.
You also had some great matches with Verne and Dog Vachon. What are your memories of working with those guys?
I wouldn't call them great. I'd say they drew and all that. But truthfully, Verne was not a good tag team wrestler. Verne was a good single wrestler. But he was not a good tag team wrestler, and they're different.
Why is that?
A tag team, because it's timing. A tag team match is much different than an individual match. And I didn't find Verne to be a particularly good tag team wrestler.
Okay. You also had some matches.
Plus, Verne used to try to orchestrate everything in the ring, yell and scream at everybody. And
he would try to call everything?
Yeah.
Right.
Even when he was on the apron. That's another thing that did not make him a good tag team wrestler. He was much better as a single wrestler than he was tag team.
You also worked with the High Flyers, Brunzell and Gagne, too. What do you remember?
They were a good tag team. Greg knew how to do tag team wrestling. I had no problem with the High Flyers, or as Adrian and I called them, the High Criers.
I remember, I guess it was the night you got the titles, and Greg no-showed, I believe. Was that an angle?
Verne.
Verne, okay. Well, was that an angle, or was that a shoot?
No, that was an angle, because Verne wouldn't do a job.
Okay.
They knew they wanted to give us the straps, but he wasn't about to get pinned in any way, shape, or form, so they tried to make it he missed a plane and didn't show or some BS like that.
Right.
That's all that it was about, nothing more. In fact, the night they were supposed to drop him to us, we were on the small plane, and Crusher had left early, and we got on the plane. Crusher said, well, did you beat him for the title? I said, no. I said, Verne wouldn't do the job. Crusher goes, are you kidding me? I said, no. And then they did this schmoz where,
right,
where they forfeited the title somehow.
Did you ever see Verne being hard on his son, Greg?
Verne was hard on everybody, but I don't think he was. I think he was more hard on all of us than he was Greg in public. He may have been hard on Greg in private,
right?
But he didn't show it much in public.
Was Greg one of the boys, or was he quote unquote office?
He was office.
He was office. Okay.
Yeah.
So all the boys would look at him as office and not really as the workers.
He was one. He about half and half. Greg was a good worker.
Yeah.
My only criticism of Greg Gagne, he never worked out to look any better. He had this horrible looking body, and he could beat all of us that had these phenomenal bodies. And I would have liked to have seen him go to the gym occasionally, and he never did. But he didn't have to. If you're winning without it, what do you need to go for, I guess?
Right.
That would have been that's my only criticism. Greg was a great worker, but my only criticism of him was he didn't put the time in to look like he should have. I thought Jimmy Brunzell trained. Notice the body difference between the two of them.
What are your early memories of Hulk Hogan from the territory in AWA?
Just that he came in and I was already there as a heel, so Verne was the one that made Hulk a babyface, because Hulk had always been a heel up to that point.
Right.
And so it was Verne that, because he had me on one side, he couldn't have two of us, I guess. So Verne came up with the idea to make Hulk the babyface. It was good timing, because when the Rocky movie came out, it would be hard for Hogan to have been pushed that hard with the movie role had he been a heel. It was much easier to push him as a babyface with the Rocky movie.
And you guys never really worked at all in AWA against each other, right?
Sure we did.
A couple times? Okay.
Yeah.
What are your memories of working with Hulk back then?
Good.
Easy to work with in the ring?
Yeah, he dislocated my jaw one night, though, in Eau Claire.
Potato?
By a mistake.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the one where you're doing the test of strength, and usually when he gets me, I'll kick him and get him down again.
Right.
And then in the end, they reverse it. Well, he kicked too soon and reversed too soon. He kicked me right in the point of the jaw, and he dislocated my jaw, and he knew it. And so we had to go another 15 minutes, and I got a dislocated jaw, and he was wonderful. I beat the crap out of him. He didn't do a thing to me.
Right.
And I had to go immediately to the hospital in Eau Claire, Wisconsin when the match was over and have the doctor yank my jaw back in place. And that wasn't a pleasant moment. But I didn't blame Hulk for that. It's just an accident that happened. He certainly didn't do it intentionally.
Okay, we'll talk more about Hulk later on in the interview. You also worked a little bit with Otto Vanz. What are your memories of the title change with Otto Vanz?
I didn't work with him.
Okay, I thought you had worked with
No,
Otto.
he was there, but I never worked with him.
Okay.
And I'm glad I didn't, because he didn't look too good to me.
Right. A lot of people said that too about him.
I didn't, I never worked with him.
Memories of a very young Curt Hennig.
Adrian and I took on Curt and Larry.
Right.
Yeah, and Curt was good. You could tell that Curt had great ability. You could tell he kept himself and was in terrific shape, and I loved his father, the Axe. Heenan would always look at me and go, "How can you take that axe from Hennig?" I said, "He's never potatoed me." Larry always treated me wonderful in the ring. Wonderful. Where a lot of guys, I guess he pounded him around pretty good. Never did to me.
Yeah, a lot of guys that we've done interviews with say he was really stiff, so.
It wasn't to me. Larry Hennig was as soft and easy to me as anybody I'd been in the ring with.
Did Curt Hennig rib a lot of people early on in his career? Because obviously Curt's known as one of the biggest ribbers out there. Did you see any of that going on in AWA days, or is that?
Did he do what now?
Rib anybody?
Rib people?
Yeah, like play pranks or anything like that.
No.
Okay.
He was a rookie then. He minded his P's and Q's.
Right.
Rookies don't do that.
Right.
You don't start doing that till you've been around a while.
Bad locker room etiquette. Memories of Bruiser Brody when he came into the territory.
Never worked with him, but I knew Bruiser, and I can't really comment on him because I never worked against him. He was a villain, and so was I. And villains don't often go against each other.
Obviously. You were there when Vince Jr. started taking over the different territories and started expanding.
Yep.
Did you think that he would put all the territories out of business?
No, and I hoped he wouldn't. I remember when I used to ride with John Studd and another territory would fold, John's big hands would tighten on that steering wheel. He'd go, "This is bad. This is really bad." Because John understood that competition is good for the boys. Monopoly is not good for the boys.
Right. Obviously, you have more places to work. You have more power.
And plus, in the days of the territory, there was more opportunity for more wrestlers. Now that it's all under basically one roof, I mean, you got another organization, whoever they are, that other TNA, whatever they are. But the more territories there are, the more opportunity there is. And so, as the business had the corporate takeover, for lack of better terms, but it's no different than what's happening everything else in the world.
You were in AWA, I believe, when Hogan and Okerlund and Heenan all left the company, right?
Heenan left after me.
After you?
I left before Heenan.
Okay.
The first three to leave were Hogan, David Schultz, and Okerlund, and I was right behind them.
Right.
I came when Vince called.
How did
because Vince had told me I went back to Verne after working for Vince's father.
Right.
And I went back to Verne, but before I did, Vince told me, "I'm going to call you in about 6 months, and then you're going to come and work for me forever." And I said, "Okay." So I went back and worked for Verne for about 6 months, but I knew the call was coming.
Right.
You know what? How Vince did it with me? He waited until he had booked Minnesota, and then he had me jump one for that card.
Right.
I left the AWA and went to the WWF in that card.
Did you give Verne notice through a mail, and then you did promos?
Telegram. And that was under Vince's orders. I was going to go do it face-to-face, and Vince said, I don't want you to do that. Because he said, all that'll be is a confrontation and a fight. He said, just send him a telegraph stating that you no longer desire the bookings of the AWA, that you are now with the WWF. He was my boss, so I did what my boss told me to do.
Wow. Now, did you go to TV still for Verne and do promos for upcoming house shows? And then I think, from what I understand, Verne aired them or something like that, or no? That never happened?
I think that happened with Hogan.
Okay.
Not me.
Okay.
Nope.
All right. When some of the certain guys like Hogan and Okerlund jumped ship to Vince, did you see the writing on the wall for Verne Gagne and his company?
No, but Verne didn't know how to fight a war.
Right.
See, I'm a Navy SEAL. I know how to fight wars. And the mistake made there was always take care of your own backyard before you venture into the enemy territory. Verne made the mistake. He saw Vince come into his territory, so he immediately came out here and he wasn't prepared for it. If he would have just simply protected his own backyard, he may have survived. But when he tried to expand, right away he was in no position to do it. It was an ego thing. Well, you've run in my territory, now we'll see how you like it if I run in yours. Bad move. He should have protected his own backyard.
Did he have enough talent and big names to draw when he lost Hogan and Okerlund? I mean,
sure, he could have. You know what the final straw was for me with him?
What was
you
that?
be the judge. I was with Masa Saito then, who I lovingly called Mr. Torture.
Right.
Never feared nobody. When Masa was my partner, he was tough. Mr. Saito.
Right.
And right before it happened, we had wrestled La Crosse, Wisconsin, and we did an angle to come back in the cage, right? I got my payoff. We came back in the cage. Verne and Greg had gone to their Aspen vacation like they always did right after that. We came back in the cage match. The house jumped by $10,000 or $15,000, and I got less money. I got paid less. I came up to Carbo. I go, what is this? I said, the house jumps $15,000 and I get paid less. Wally Toussaint says, hey, Verne makes the payoffs. Don't talk to me. Well, Verne was off on vacation. I dawned on me, we were paying for it. That was us paying for Verne's vacation. That was the final straw for me. I looked at Carbo. I said, what's my incentive to draw a house then? I hope I wrestle in front of nobody.
Right.
You'll give me more money.
Right.
I said, and that was the last straw for me. I thought and what?
You were just waiting for the call anyway.
But I'd already gotten it.
Right.
But why wouldn't I jump at that point? You know, he pays me less now. What he should have been doing, he should have been padding us more to keep his talent. Doesn't it seem logical to you? You want to keep your talent, give up some.
Right.
Don't take. And he took, and that was the final straw. I said, and that was so funny because when I made the final decision, we had another town to do, and my friend Steve Rigo was there, and I had told Steve what I was going to do, that I was jumping. All that night in his match, he's selling the armbar, and he's screaming, so all you're, help me, save me, Vince, save me.
That's awesome.
From the ring, and I'm back going, you dummy, Rigo, shut up.
That's awesome.
You know, but he was doing it as an inside joke to me.
That's awesome.
Save me, Vince, save me.
Now, before you jumped, back in the day, you also worked for Vince Sr. You did a couple shows for him. Obviously, you worked there a little bit.
No, I worked here a whole stretch.
You were there
the first time you're brought in to New York, you do 6 months.
Okay, and that's when they put you
That's
with Freddie,
the program. Right? That's when they put me with Freddie. I had my 3 sellouts with Backlund for the world title, and you do a 6-month program, then you leave, and then the next time you come back, you usually got a year or a year and a half.
Right. Was that around 81, maybe?
That was 81.
81, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What are your memories of Fred Blassie, and you get to work with him?
Oh, Freddie was great. I always liked classy Freddie Blassie. He's an old legend. And the only thing was that I got to be such a good interview man. They started telling Freddie to keep quiet.
Right.
Because Freddie tried to be. The reason they had the managers here was generally they could talk better than the wrestlers. Well, Vince and Junior and Senior both saw quickly that I could talk better than Fred could. So they tell Freddie, just do the opening and then give the rest to Jesse.
That's awesome. What are your memories of Vince Senior?
The smoothest promoter I ever met. I remember one time I was so mad I went into him, and it was so funny. When I walked out, I felt great and I accomplished nothing. And about 10 minutes later, I'm kicking myself going, he didn't give you a thing, and you walked out feeling good.
A lot of people say that about Junior, too.
Whoops, I kicked
That's
out.
okay.
That's okay. I don't know if Junior's that good or not. I don't think Junior, truthfully, was as savvy as his father in many ways. Junior's a little more volatile. His father never showed any emotion. Junior will raise his voice. Senior never did.
Right. Memories of working with Bob Backlund.
Bob, fellow Minnesotan, Princeton, Minnesota. I had no complaints over Bob. Bob kept himself in phenomenal condition. Bob was made the champion so Vince could spite Bruno, if you know that history.
Right.
And I always wondered how they could make Howdy Doody a champion. But Bob worked hard, don't get me wrong. Bob was a solid wrestler, he just wasn't flashy. And for me, it was a little mundane and boring, but maybe that's what you need out of a babyface. He did well.
A lot of the guys that we've done interviews with said that Bob was really paranoid as champion. Did you get that impression that he was paranoid at all to work with?
No.
No? Okay.
No. I never had that impression at all with him.
Okay. Memories of your feud with Tony Atlas?
Love Tony. Tony was fun to work with. Tony was great. I always enjoyed him. Plus, the thing I loved about Tony, my son at the time was 2 years old, and occasionally I'd bring him to the dressing room, and Tony would be down on the floor with my kid playing cars.
Right.
Tony had the heart of gold. I look at Tony Atlas. I've always loved Tony Atlas. A good guy. Good guy.
At what point in your career, early on, did you sit back and realize, I'm starting to get this business. I'm understanding it more. At what point do you think that was in your career?
I don't think you ever fully get it.
A lot of people say you're always learning in the wrestling business. So.
I would say the same.
Okay.
I don't think you ever fully get it. You're always learning. You're always improving, hopefully, and yeah.
Okay. You kind of left WWF abruptly after your first run. Was that planned, or did you walk out?
Vince Sr.?
For Vince Sr.
That was totally planned.
Okay.
Yeah, no, my run was up. Although I had gotten injured. I
Right.
hurt my back severely. Atlas and I had a cage match. And I was, and here it's out of the cage, which I never could figure out. Isn't the cage to keep you in?
Yeah.
But here you had to get out of the cage to win. And I was going up, and Tony pulled me, and I slipped. And my back straddled the top rope and boomeranged me back in, and I blew my whole back out. I couldn't wrestle for almost 10 days. I had to go to the chiropractor. I couldn't even walk. I couldn't even put my pants on. My wife would have to dress me. And fortunately, it was right at the end because I'd already had my run with Backlund.
Right.
So I was really just finishing out with Tony. But no, there was virtually no hostility or bad blood when I left. My run was over, and I was heading home.
Okay. You also went down to Memphis just for a brief period of time.
Yep.
You worked for Jarrett. What do you remember?
No, I did not. I worked for Jerry Lawler.
Jerry Lawler was okay. Was he booking there, or was
Jerry
he on
ran the whole thing.
Okay.
Jerry hired me. Jerry ran the whole thing.
What are your memories of the territory down there?
I enjoyed it. Jerry made me a hell of a deal. I met him, and he said, "Come down and work for me." He said, "I'll bring you down Monday through Wednesday, and you can come home every weekend." So he'd fly me down on Monday. I'd be there 3 days, and he'd fly me back on Thursday. And here's my claim to fame. I beat Jerry Lawler for the title down there, the Southern States champion.
Right.
He never beat me in Memphis. He had beaten Andre. He beat everybody in Memphis. Jerry Lawler never beat Jesse Ventura.
Why is that? You just never had
No, because my daughter was born and she had some severe complications, and I told Jerry I can't leave, and Jerry was very understanding, and he said, just FedEx me the belt.
Wow.
And so, unfortunately, I had to leave that way because of a personal matter. Nothing else. But Jerry Lawler understood. I know Jerry suffered a mild heart attack this week, and I wish him well and a speedy recovery because I liked Jerry Lawler. He was always a fair man to me.
What are your memories of the territory? How long were you down there for? How many weeks
not
did you...
that long. I'd do those 3. I probably was for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it
You
was.
teamed with Stan Hansen, I think, one time down there.
Yeah, I may have.
And then,
Jimmy Hart, me and Jimmy Hart took on Jerry and the San Diego Chicken.
Right.
One of the greatest matches. And I had fun with Jerry because Jerry comes up and the guy was scared shitless. And
who's that, Jerry?
The San Diego Chicken.
Right, no.
And Jerry comes up and says, "Now look, you can't do this, you can't do that." I looked at Lawler working him and I says, "You made that deal, Jerry. I didn't." I says, "I'm going to rip his chicken head off and expose him. I'll get press all over the United States."
Right.
And I had Lawler believing that I was going to go out there and rip the chicken's head thing off and expose who he was. But I didn't. I was just doing it, having fun. But, I had Lawler sweating brass tacks on that one.
That's awesome. Obviously, you worked at one of the major Coliseums, the Mid-South Coliseum.
Yeah.
What are your memories of that historic...
The only thing I remember was perfectly round.
Right. It
That's
worked.
all. I mean, you see so many arenas, you can't ask a question like that. They all start looking alike after a while. I can't remember. All I remember is it was round.
Right. Another guy that you worked with down there was Austin Idol. To me, is one of the best talkers in the business. Do you remember working a little program
Austin
with
was a
him?
good talker next to me.
Right. I agree. I say you're one of the best, but he was also another guy that was known for his mic skills.
Sure, and another guy that copied Graham.
Right.
You know, face it, Graham had a huge impact on the wrestling business.
A lot of guys. Hogan, a lot of guys.
Everybody.
Yeah. Steiner.
Everybody. Billy Graham was the man, superstar.
Memories of Idol? Did you?
No, I didn't know Austin that well. Just
Okay.
the short time I was there.
Okay. Going back to WWF or even WWF at the time, memories of some of your matches with Andre the Giant.
Actually, I remember the only match that I truly remember with Andre was in Topeka, Kansas for Geigel. First time I ever wrestled him.
Easy to work with? Scared?
Oh, easy, but eye-opening. We locked up in the ring. I put a front face lock on him. I didn't help him a bit. He picked me right up over his head, walked me over, set me on the turnbuckle, and patted me on the cheek. And I sat there a minute. I went, holy cripe! Nobody has ever picked me up. And I didn't help him.
Right.
The power of him was unbelievable, his strength. And I thought, wow. But Andre, gentleman, through and through. Always never a bad word for anybody. Never ever gave me a potato. You know, Andre was great.
Good guy outside the ring.
Totally. You walk in the dressing room, it was always, hi, boss. He'd be sitting in the corner playing cards with Skolin.
Yep,
you knew right where Andre'd be, playing cards with Skolin in the corner.
Talk about how you ended up in the WWF. You got the phone call finally from Vince, and you came into the territory, and from there...
You mean the second time?
The second time.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Just because Vince told me, I'll call you when I want you, and he did, and I made the jump, and the rest was history. I knew that Vince's production was so superior. I knew that he had a vision, and I also knew that I didn't want to be in the business anymore anyway. So if I was burning all my bridges, so be it.
Right.
When the run with Vince was over, if it was over, that was it. But Vince was a man of his word when he called me. I said, you got to guarantee me I can be with you at least 7 years. And I was 7 on the nose.
Was Verne upset that you left the company?
Yeah.
Okay. Did he try to contact you at all and try to get you back, or?
No.
He knew that you were pretty much a done deal?
Yeah.
Okay.
But he was very upset. He yelled at me at an event one time.
What happened there?
None. We were at a charity golf event, and we were both there in the reception.
Oh, you're saying this is after the fact?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And he yelled and screamed at me. I just turned around and walked away from him.
Right. No need to...
What point? What's the point?
Now, when Vince Jr. tried to buy AWA from Verne and offered him all that money, and obviously I'm sure you've heard that story, do you think Verne should have taken the deal?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
You think it was an ego thing with Verne?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
What were your initial impressions of Vince Jr. when you first started working with him?
I loved Vince Jr. Vince Jr. was a savior, in a way, to all of us in the business. He had a vision, and the fact his production, and we ended up on NBC television, and we all became megastars. I mean, I wouldn't be where I'm at today without what happened at that point, but I played a role in it too.
Without a doubt.
But we had threats. We had death threats. All of us were told we'd never work in another territory. We'd be blackballed again. But that didn't bother me because I was ready to end it anyway when I was done with him, which I did.
Right.
You notice when I left Vince the final time, I'm probably the only wrestler who, when he retired, never made a comeback.
That's true.
I moved on.
How did things change when Hogan came into the company for Vince in 83, 84?
Hogan was already there when I got there.
Okay, he was already there.
I can't state that because Hogan arrived there slightly before me, so he was already there.
And he was already obviously getting the big push.
He already had the belt.
Right, exactly. Did you see a change in the personality with ego-wise with Hawk early on? Did he change from his AWA days, or was he the same person, just one of the boys?
He seemed to be one of the boys at that time, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
You and Hawk have had an on and off again relationship for decades. Why do you think that is?
We were completely on until I brought my lawsuit against Vince when I left him.
About the royalties and all that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And when I sued Vince, of course, we had to depose him. Well, let me regress a little. Right before WrestleMania 2 and right before I did Predator,
Right.
I stood up in the dressing room and tried to unionize wrestling.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, and there were nobody from the office there when I did it. I said, boys, now's our chance. All the publicity's gone out on WrestleMania 2. All we have to do is refuse to wrestle and go public and say we want federal, because it's federal law, we want union representation to come in. And what caused that, I was in Vegas, and I got on an elevator with Gene Upshaw. Remember, head of the NFL union?
Right.
I remember Big Gene looked at me and all he said to me was, you boys need to unionize. And I said, I know, Gene. And so I made this spiel to the boys. I said, look, if we can do it, then we can get WCW to follow suit. If WCW's wrestlers will do what we're doing here, we can have a union. I made the big spiel. The next day, my phone rang. It was Vince. He came within an eyelash of firing me.
I was going to ask you, how much heat did you get for that?
The only thing that saved me, and the reason I did it, I had to quit Vince to do Predator. Vince wasn't going to let me do it.
That's one of my questions.
And I quit. I told him, well, then I quit. Because I said, I can always come back to wrestling. I'll never get a chance to co-star with Arnold Schwarzenegger again. And so I went off and did Predator. And then when I came back to Vince, right? Because what happened was I went off 10 weeks to do Predator. Saturday Night Main Event got renewed for a second season. But NBC thought there'd be Jesse Ventura. There wasn't Jesse Ventura, it was Bobby Heenan.
Right.
The heat came down from NBC. We bought this program with Jesse Ventura. Where the hell is he? Then Vince came back, and now the ball was in my court. And so when I came back from Predator, the first thing I did on the set of Predator, Schwarzenegger came up to me and said, Jesse, my next film this fall is going to be The Running Man. He said, there's a part in there you're perfect for. I would like you to do it. I said, great. So when I got back to the United States after Predator, before I even talked to Vince, I signed The Running Man that fall so I would have the ace in the hole. This way I could say to Vince, no.
Right.
Because I now had an acting career. And plus, when I did Predator, when I came back to Vince then, I said, Vince, you won't hear me bring up union anymore. He goes, really, why not? I said, because I'm now a member of SAG. I got my union. I've got retirement. I've got medical benefits. I said, if these guys are too stupid to want it, I said, then let them deal with it. I got my union.
Very
and
smart.
I'm still a member of SAG. I'm 26 years vested now. So when I came back to Vince, here's what went down.
Who stooged you off? One of the boys?
Hogan.
Hogan stooged you off, okay.
Well, that was because of the lawsuit.
Right, okay.
Yeah, no, during the lawsuit, we had to depose Vince. I told my attorney about the union thing. I said, if you can find out who told Vince in this deposition, and I told him those stories. So at that point, my attorney's very brilliant because they ended up beating Vince.
Right.
He had Vince sitting there and he said, Mr. McMahon, in deposition, he says, has wrestling ever had a union? And Vince, of course, said no. My attorney said, has anyone ever tried to form a union? And Vince paused me and said, yeah. He said, I think Jesse Ventura spouted his mouth off about it one time or another because now Vince didn't like me. I'm suing him, right? And my attorney said, well, did you hear Mr. Ventura say it? And Vince, with no hesitation, said, oh, no, Hulk Hogan told me. And I didn't show no emotion, but I almost fell to the floor because Hogan was a friend. And I found out, my God, it was Hogan who stooged me to Vince for trying to, and Hogan denies it. Well, Vince admitted it under oath in a federal deposition, and he also admitted it on Larry King's show, because Larry breached the subject with him, and he backed it up again. So you tell me who's lying, Hogan or Vince?
Wow. I know Hogan went on Howard Stern, and I don't know if he wanted to comment about this at all, and he made some accusations about you being a wife swapper and smoking pot with you and Adrian Adonis. Was that even, that's all?
Well, first of all, yeah, I smoked pot. Who didn't?
Right.
Wife swapping? Ridiculous.
Okay.
Let me challenge back and go, I've been married 37 years to one woman. What happened to his wife?
Okay, I had to throw that out there and ask you that question.
Why do you think I hate him now?
Right.
That he would go out and say, I'm a wife.
Have you heard that before, or is this the first time?
Howard told me.
Okay, yeah.
I know about it. Howard told me when I was on with him.
Okay.
That's the biggest crack of crap I've ever heard. Oh yeah, I had the Plato's Retreat stuff. My wife and I went down there. We wanted to see what it was. We watched it, and I bought a T-shirt because I knew it'd be controversial as hell.
Right.
Yeah, because I used to wear it with the beads, Plato's Retreat, when I wrestled in '81, I think, or something like that. Wife swapping.
Now, Predator. Filming
Yep.
the movie Predator. That was your very first movie. What kind of experience was that for you? I mean,
Phenomenal.
How was Arnold to work with?
Great. And I was doing what I used to do. I didn't have to act.
All right.
I'm a Navy SEAL. That was nothing.
All right.
Going back to war.
A lot of fun?
Yeah.
How long was the shoot?
Although I did the first couple times in the jungle, it was a bit uncomfortable.
How long did you shoot down there for?
10 weeks.
10 weeks. Okay. Any stories stick out from the shooting of that film that you want to talk about?
No, nothing really.
Okay.
No.
So you ended up back working for Vince after the filming, and
Yeah.
you worked your problems out.
And then I had The Running Man waiting in the fall.
Right. Another awesome film with Arnold.
And what I also did when I renegotiated back with Vince, here's what went down.
I was going to ask you, how did that...
Vince called me, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, Vince, there's a problem. He goes, what is it? I said, I have an agent now named Barry Bloom. And I said, Barry Bloom represents me in everything I do. Commercials, everything about my career except wrestling. I said, Vince, I'll give you 2 minutes to convince me why Barry Bloom should not represent me when it comes to wrestling too. And Vince went on and on about we can't have agents in wrestling and gave me all this BS. When he was done, I said, you didn't convince me, Vince. I said, if you want me back, here's Barry Bloom's number. And we ended the conversation. Of course, Vince didn't call Barry. He got an underling to do it.
Right.
But as I said when I was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2004, my proudest moment in wrestling was that I was the first wrestler who ever introduced an agent into the business, not even Hogan. Hogan had a Hollywood agent, but the Hollywood agent did not deal with Vince.
Now,
And I was the first wrestler that made Vince McMahon deal with an agent.
Now, when you came back, did you sense a little bit of a strain on your relationship with Vince to work with? 'Cause
No.
Maybe,
Nope.
Okay.
Vince is always a professional when
All
you're
business?
all business when you're on the mic and performing.
Okay.
Or doing what you do. No, I give him credit for that.
Plus, you're an asset to his company, so...
Yeah, there was no hostility whatsoever.
Okay. Going back to some of the in-ring appearances you had, you also worked a little bit with Ivan Putski. Memories of working with Ivan?
Yeah. Just that it was fun. Ivan was pretty limited, so you had to work around Ivan a little bit.
Right.
But he was a good guy.
Now, were you supposed to have a big run with Hogan when you discovered you had Agent Orange?
I didn't have Agent Orange.
I
I
mean,
never had Agent Orange.
You got sick or something?
Yeah, no,
What was the story?
I didn't discover it. I ended up 7 days in the hospital in San Diego. I had pulmonary emboli, blood clots in the lungs.
Okay.
Happened over a 3-day period. I didn't know what it was. It was coming on. I had no breath. I couldn't breathe every time I'd wrestle. I should have been dead because pulmonary emboli is usually fatal the first time. It was the night before I was supposed to start my big 3-match go-around with Hogan all over the world. John Studd had to take my place. But out of bad comes good, because during my convalescing, that's when Vince called me and said, well, first of all, let me give Vince credit. When I went down, he still continued to pay me $1,000 a week, which he did not have to do, which I give him credit for. But I drew him enough crowds that I didn't get to wrestle that I think it more than paid for it.
Right.
Because Studd replaced me. And then Vince called me, and it turned out to be the huge blessing. He called me one day, he said, Jesse, when I couldn't come back, he said, I got an idea. I said, what's that? He said, do you think you could be a broadcaster on the mic? I said, I could. He said, here's my idea. I want to put the first villain on the mic. There's never been a villain who sides with the heels on the mic. Can you do that? I said, you're damn right I can. So I came back, and I'll never forget, first time on TV, Vince pulls me in and says, here's your mindset. He said, if you believe it, it's true.
That's awesome.
I said, okay.
That's
And
awesome.
away we go. So I give Vince...
He gave you the ball.
Oh, he gave me the ball, let me run with it, and I don't think I fumbled either.
Without a doubt, no, you didn't. Now, if you did work Hogan, how do you think that program would have done?
I think it'd been phenomenal. It was sold out everywhere.
Yeah.
John made a lot of money, and he didn't have to do nothing but get in the ring. No, it was sold out. Every place I was booked, the first round, were completely sold out. Everybody wanted to see Jesse the Body.
You cut
go
promos and
against
stuff
Hulk.
for it already? No.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
They had to announce I was in critical condition in the San Diego, and I was, for 7 days. My wife even had to fly out to San Diego when the doctor called. She goes, how bad is it? He said, you better get on a plane. They had me directly monitored right to the nurse's station.
How did that happen? How does that come about, that illness?
Certain people are susceptible to it from flying.
Wow. Oh, okay.
And in that time, I was flying, month of August, I flew 28 days of the month.
Okay. As far as, the doctors talking to you, did they pretty much tell you you were pretty much done in the ring?
No, I came back.
Okay.
I came back and wrestled and broadcast. Remember the famous Saturday Night main event?
Yeah.
Where I broadcasted, got in the ring, and then I challenged all other announcers in any other sport. I'm the only announcer in any sport. You don't see a football announcer going out and playing football.
Right.
Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So, I quit wrestling on my own. I started making as much or more money because it was two separate deals I had with Vince. And I started making more money broadcasting than taking bumps. And I already told you I didn't like bumps anyway.
Right.
So I thought, who needs to do this wrestling? I can mouth off now all I want and I don't have to get in the ring. So I just switched completely to announcing at that point.
We want to get into your next chapter of your life pretty much. You talked about now becoming an announcer. When you told Vince Jr., how did he react when you told him that you were sick? Obviously,
he was concerned. I didn't tell him I was sick. The hospital called him. I couldn't talk to anybody. Are you kidding me? It wasn't like I was laying in bed with a cold. I was in intensive care for 7 days.
Right. Okay. Now, obviously, it was his idea to make you an announcer.
Yep.
How did you gel with Vince immediately? Was the chemistry there right off the bat?
Well, I didn't announce with him immediately. I started with Gorilla.
With Gorilla? Okay.
Yeah, and then I got moved up to the A-team. At that time, it was Vince and Bruno on the A-team, and it was me and Gorilla, the B-team. And I was so good that Vince decided he would remove me from Gorilla and take me up with him on the A-team. And then, of course, when Saturday Night Main Event came, that solidified me completely because then I became the premier announcer and the face and voice of wrestling.
Without a doubt. You and Vince's chemistry together was just awesome from back in the day.
Well, I'd do it again right now if you put the decimal point in the right place.
Right. There you go.
That's all it takes.
Right. It's money talks.
Put the decimal point where it belongs. I'll be back tomorrow.
You spent a lot of time with Vince. What surprised you most about Vince?
I'll put it this way. Vince is the P.T. Barnum of our generation.
Workaholic?
A workaholic and very innovative, and he's willing to gamble. He did with the XFL. You know, Vince isn't afraid to roll the dice.
Right.
And I think that's what gives him the edge.
And it's pretty true that, if it wasn't for WrestleMania, the very first one, from what I understand, the company might have not be here today, as far as...
You probably know more about that than I do.
Okay.
I was too busy working.
Okay. Did you sense immediate chemistry with Gorilla Monsoon?
Oh, yeah. I had chemistry with everyone I broadcast with. Tony Schiavone, Gorilla Monsoon, Vince McMahon. It didn't matter. I can broadcast. Well, the only guy I couldn't broadcast with was Jim Ross.
Why's that?
I don't think he liked me.
Really?
Yeah, he wouldn't put over me. He would never work with me. I think he was angry because I was probably making 4 times the money he was, or 10 times, who knows.
Right.
Jim Ross is the only guy I could never work with on the mic.
Wow. I'm going to ask you about WCW coming up, and I'll ask you about Jim Ross too. So, getting back to WWF, we did an interview with Bruno Sammartino, and he said he felt like he was pushed out as an announcer. Do you agree?
Yeah, and I begged Vince to keep him. I begged Vince, don't lose Bruno. He's my foil. Bruno's perfect. I wanted Bruno to stay.
All right.
Because I loved Bruno. Bruno's so honest and in a way naive on the mic. He was phenomenal. Because I remember one time he says, Bruno goes, well, I'm going to go to WrestleMania. I can't wait to go there, da-da-da. And I said, how you getting there, Bruno, the Hound? And he goes, what's the Hound? I said, the Greyhound bus. And Bruno goes, bus, train, plane, I don't care. I'm going to be there. He was so wooden.
Right.
That off of me, it was perfect. And when Vince was getting rid of him, I begged Vince, don't lose Bruno. I love Bruno. Bruno's the guy. He's my foil.
Right.
But, again, it was so... I can honestly tell you, I did not cause Bruno to leave. I wanted Bruno to stay.
Okay. Was Vince pretty approachable if you had ideas and stuff? Or was he...
I never bothered to give him ideas.
Right.
That wasn't my job. My job is to broadcast what I see and give opinions on it, not give Vince ideas. That wasn't what I was hired to do.
What are some of your early memories with Gorilla and Vince that really stick out? Some of your favorite moments doing announcing with them?
Oh, well, I loved when Uncle Elmer got married because Vince came up to me before the broadcast and simply said, "Bury him."
Which you did.
I said, "Bury him, bury him." Okay.
I remember your line today. It looks like two carp in the Mississippi River going after the same piece of corn or something like that.
Yeah, Bill Murray sent a message to me, the great Bill Murray, from said the greatest live line he'd ever heard.
That was awesome.
He said he was down on the floor. And I thought, geez, to get Bill Murray, that's a good compliment.
Without a doubt.
Well, how about when the wife got hit with the pint bottle? Remember, come flying down, struck her in the head?
Right.
And when I went, there it is, McMahon, a sign from above. This marriage shouldn't take place.
It was awesome. I could watch those shows over and over again. Why do you feel like some great promo guys like Superstar Billy Graham can't make the announcement or the announcer transition?
I don't know. You're asking me to answer a question that I don't know. I can't answer for anybody else. I can only take care of myself. I don't know why they can't do it if they can't.
Right. Okay. What were your initial impressions of the Macho Man, Randy Savage?
Loved him. Tremendous performer. One of the best I've ever seen. I've always said the greatest match that I've ever witnessed in my life was WrestleMania 3, Macho Man against Ricky Steamboat. I don't think there's ever been a match on this planet that was better than that one.
I agree with you. It was awesome. I guess Randy, behind the scenes, we've done interviews with a ton of the boys, and they say he was really protective of Elizabeth, obviously.
Why not? It's his wife.
Did you see anything like the paranoia or anything? I've heard stories where he would lock her in closets and.
Oh, I don't know if he locked her in closet, but he did hover over her and really never let her out of his sight too much. But you know what? I never paid attention to that because I wasn't that type of person. I wasn't going to hit on Elizabeth. I wasn't going to do so. Really, to me, I took care of myself, and I just looked at Macho and Elizabeth as two performers, and I treated them accordingly with respect of what they did.
Who did you travel with back then?
Nobody. John Studd.
John Studd?
John Studd was probably the guy I traveled with the most. I liked Big John. He was a family man. He had a wife and kids in D.C. He's a veteran like myself. John was in the Army when I was in the Navy. Well, not when, but we're both veterans. So I would say Big John Studd was probably the guy I was closest to in the WWF at that time.
Okay. Did you have a lot of interaction with a lot of the boys?
Nope.
Stay to yourself?
Yep.
Okay. All right. You actually did some commentary, I believe, with Randy, too? Did you team with Randy as far as doing any commentating at any point in time? No? Okay. Because I think in the ring, didn't they team you guys a little bit?
Oh, we had a few. Yeah, we had a tag team match a few, but not on the mic.
Okay. What are your memories of teaming with Randy?
Only thing I remember is I had to lay there and take the elbow, and boy, that was scary. Guy moved out of the way. That was the finish, and Mach hits me with it, and I made him carry me out on a stretcher. And that was done at the place in Long Island, Nassau.
Right.
Because I thought, Jesus, who's going to get up from this? So I made him carry me out of the ring on a stretcher after he hit me with the elbow, by mistake, of course.
Right. Okay. You also had the body shop. Whose idea was for that interview segment? Was that Vince's idea?
Yeah, because Roddy was doing good with his, and so they thought they'd do one on the alternative program with me and Gorilla.
Right.
So we started, when Piper's Pit went, they started the body shop then.
Did any of the boys ever get upset with you, I guess, for anything you had said to them?
Upset? No, not at all. I embarrassed a few. I remember my greatest one was when I got the Killer Bees in the body shop, and they had just returned from a trip to Australia.
Right.
And I looked at both Killer Bees. I said, "So tell me, while you guys were in Australia, did you manage to drop any pollen?"
Right.
Oh my God, Brian Blair and Brunzell just froze up. They looked at me like, how the hell do we say something after that?
Right, exactly.
And in fact, Brian's a good friend. Brian came up to me later, he goes, "Jesse, you SOB," and jokingly.
Right.
He said, "How the hell do you expect us to answer something like that? Did you drop any pollen while you're in Australia?" In other words, I was asking if they got laid.
Right, obviously, right. That's awesome. Was there any ever rivalry between you and Roddy Piper to become the top heel personality in WWF? Obviously, with
not from me.
No.
If there was from him, I don't know. We co-starred in a pilot together.
Right.
Tag team out in L.A. No, I never looked at Roddy as a rival. I just did my own thing. You know, if anybody felt that, it certainly didn't come from me. It would have been from them.
What was Roddy like outside the ring?
Kind of a crazy guy,
Right.
you know, but likable. You know, like I still see Roddy occasionally in L.A.
Right.
You know, and we get along great. We'll sit and chew the fat and talk. And he tells me how much he misses the boys and misses the business, and I look at him and tell him the opposite.
Right.
I don't miss it at all. I don't miss the boys at all. So Roddy and I are really diametrically opposed on that end. I think Roddy has a harder time leaving the business than I did.
I guess you were talking a little bit earlier on about not having any real friends in the business. Would you consider, besides John Studd, who would you consider some of your friends in the business?
Well, they're all my friends in the business, but I don't have any animosity towards anyone particularly except Hogan,
Right.
which we've already discussed why. But they're all friends. I just didn't become intimate friends with anyone in the business.
Okay.
You know, I don't think that I had hostility towards anybody. There was nobody I really disliked. And one of the reasons I can say that is because I didn't hang out with anybody to grow a dislike to them. I tried to keep it always at a professional level.
How did your life change as WWE, or back then WWF, how did your life change as it grew?
I made more money.
Right?
And I became, I guess you'd say, it took me to stardom in a way.
How did you handle fame as far as being in public?
Probably the same way I do today.
Totally down to earth, no ego?
Well, yeah, I mean, to me it's a job, it's a business, it's required of you. And actually today I actually try to stay away from it all. Why do you think I bought my house in Mexico? Down there I'm just a big gringo. They don't know who I am.
Right.
And I like that. I like the anonymity now of being out of the light. As you get older, I think I prefer less spotlight today. You strive for it in your youth. But today, I'll tell you this honestly, within the next few years I may disappear. And you may never hear from me again.
Wow.
Put it this way, I created Jesse Ventura. I'll kill him too.
Sounds like a TV show. There you go. Let me ask you about WrestleMania. We talked a little bit about it earlier. Did you...
Are we going to get to my book?
We're going to plug everything, trust me.
Thank you.
Don't worry, we're going to plug everything. WrestleMania, when you first heard about the concept, what did you feel about it? Did you think it was going to work?
We were so busy working, who the hell had time to think about the concept?
Right.
We all thought, wow, this is a big event, especially when Vince went out and got Muhammad Ali, when he got Liberace, when he got all these big stars to come there. It was kind of mind-boggling for us, too, to look at it and go, holy cripe, this is wrestling? You know, this is, well, a sellout at the Garden, of course, wasn't a big thing, because we used to always sell the Garden out. But just the whole pomp and circumstance of thinking we're on pay-per-view across the entire nation on this deal, you know, yeah, that part of it. But the build-up to it, you're so busy wrestling, you ain't got time to worry about the build-up or think about it.
What was the travel like back then? In the 80s?
Hell.
What was a typical month? Obviously, it was a lot of work, TVs, and...
I used to, you know those big hockey bags?
Yes.
That's what I left on the road with.
So did you just went to TVs, right? Or did you do house shows too?
Oh, no, when I wrestled, I did all the house
Right, well, I
shows,
know that.
you know?
But when you became an announcer, what was your job duties for the company?
Oh, that was the greatest job in the world when I quit the ring.
Right.
Oh, I played a lot of golf. No, when I went strictly announcing, I only had to work one day every 3 weeks.
Just
and the
TVs?
pay-per-views.
Okay, right.
They'd fly me to Connecticut. We'd do 3 weeks worth of tapes, and I'd come back the next day, and I was off for 3 weeks. Why do you think a lot of the boys hated me? The greatest thing Freddie Blassie said about me, biggest compliment in the world, I heard about it. Freddie told the whole locker room, he said, Jesse Ventura is the only one that totally calls his shots with Vince. It's because I had an agent.
That's awesome.
And I was totally, Vince got me for what he contracted me to do and nothing more. I would work one day every 3 weeks doing the announcing, and I'd do, what did he have, 5 pay-per-views a year then or whatever they were? And the pay-per-view salary was separate. I got paid for that, and I got paid separately for all the pay-per-views.
I'm going to ask you about Mr. T real quick. What are your thoughts on Vince putting Mr. T in there as a wrestler? Did you think that, I mean, obviously we heard what happened with him and Piper and protecting the business.
Who cares? Mr. T was a draw. Mr. T was red hot. He did the business a great favor, and I'm sure he was well rewarded for it financially. And as far as a person, I love Mr. T. He is a gentleman. When I brought my son in Minneapolis, who was a little boy, to meet him, I couldn't have asked for and my son at that time, the A-team, my son was a little boy. Mr. T was so nice to my son that there will always be a loving place in my heart for him, because I'll tell you what he did. He had to go to the ring, and he had one of them bend things he'd work out with.
Right.
When he had to go, he took that and he handed it to my son. He said, "You keep this for me till I get back."
That's awesome.
I love Mr. T. I say that today. I love the guy. He was a gentleman to me, and like I said, he couldn't have been more of a wonderful person to my son, who I might add today is 6'7" and 32 years old.
I've talked to him on the phone a couple times.
Have you?
So, yeah.
Okay.
You came back for a match, I believe, with Barry O at MSG. How did that happen?
I don't know.
Just
I can't even remember it.
Regular house show. Okay. Did you have a dispute with Vince over the video game too? What happened with that?
Yeah, because I came up to Vince. I had a company come up to me and want to do a whole video game. I mean, I told Vince I was going to do it, and he said I couldn't. That's what caused us to separate. That's what caused me to leave. Because I said, Vince, you don't own me. I said, I own the copyright of my own name. I can do with it what I want. And he said, if you do this, you're finished. I said, okay, I'm finished. And I left.
You were talking a little bit about unionizing the business. Do you think it's legal to classify WWE wrestlers as contractors?
No. I can't figure out how he gets away with the federal government. In fact, he's lucky I didn't become a U.S. Senator. I would have started a senatorial investigation over it.
Wow.
They are not independent contractors by any stretch of the imagination. My God, they tell you when you'll wrestle. They tell you who you'll wrestle. You can't wrestle for anyone else. An independent contractor, I should be able to wrestle for any organization I want. You're signed exclusively.
Right.
How the hell can they get away with that? That's something wrestling has gotten away with. It's been criminal.
And why do you think nobody's been able to prove this in court at all?
They could prove it. It's just that the government don't give a damn.
Right.
That's all it is. What does the government care about wrestling for? You know, if it had some effect on a congressman or a senator, you'd see it get exposed quick. But that's the biggest fraud going, independent contractor. That's just so they don't have to pay no taxes, they don't have to pay Social Security, and they don't have to give you a damn bit of benefits.
Were you there the night that Adrian Adonis and Dan Spivey got into a fist fight in the locker room? Were you?
Dan Spivey and Adrian?
Yeah.
I don't recall. I might have been, but I don't think I was in there. I didn't see it.
Okay.
I think I remember hearing of it or whatever. I don't know. You're asking me, man. That's you're talking
Some
20.
random question.
Well,
Right.
You're talking 20-some years ago.
It was one of the big fights in the locker room, so I thought that would have stuck out. Okay.
No.
All right. You've seen probably better ones, obviously.
No.
No. Okay.
I didn't see many locker room fights. I can't even remember one that I saw where anybody duked it out in the locker room.
Bobby Heenan, obviously he became one of the big names in WWF. Were you surprised at how well he did over in WWF? Or
No, not at all. Bobby's a talent, but he could never surpass me, and I think he always was jealous of that. Because every time they'd put him in to replace me as an announcer, as soon as I came back, he was delegated back down to the second team, and I think Bobby always had a little animosity at me for that.
Did the boys see you differently when you moved from wrestler to announcer with Vince?
Maybe they did. You'd have to ask them, but most of them liked me because they knew if I put them over, they made more money.
Right.
So if they did, they didn't let me know about it. You know, you'd have to ask them about it if they looked at me. I think there was probably jealousy because all of a sudden I had my own dressing room with my name on it. But again, that's because I had an agent now. And like Freddie Blassie said, Jesse Ventura is the only guy here that calls his own shots with Vince.
What are you?
I was never afraid to leave.
Because you had backup.
No, that's me. I was never afraid to leave. And if you're afraid to leave,
He's got you. All right. Were you surprised when Adrian Adonis did his cross-dresser gimmick?
who cares?
Money.
I was more surprised at how much weight he put on, you know.
Right.
But then again, like I said, his hero was Dr. Jerry Graham, and Jerry wasn't exactly built like the superstar.
Memories of the Iron Sheik.
Cosro?
Yes.
I don't know. What's the memories of him?
Well,
what am I supposed to say? He was a great amateur wrestler. He learned the business pretty good and was pretty successful at it.
Okay. How did things change after the 2020 episode where Dr. D slapped John Stossel?
God, we drew even more. The thing I remember most after that whole thing, I remember when 2020 aired, we had two towns running that night, Pittsburgh and Detroit. They were both sold out to the max. I was in Detroit, and I'll always remember the massive banner that the fans spread out across the top of the Detroit arena. 2020 sucks, because they insulted the wrestling fan.
It's true. It's true.
And hey, don't insult a wrestling fan. They're the most loyal fans on the planet.
And they pay.
Not even that they pay. They are loyal fans. And so what? Even if it is a work, big deal. It's entertainment. Why would you insult what someone sees as entertainment for themselves? 2020 did that. They were the villains.
What are your thoughts on Vince telling Schultz to slap Stossel? Do you think that's a work, or I mean, obviously
I was standing there. It was no work.
No, I know. We did an interview with Dave, and Dave said that Vince pretty much told him to. And
I don't know about that, but Stossel could, if it was a good setup then, because I was just standing there when Stossel called Dave a fake and a fraud. And then Dave's the worst one that could imagine to do that to.
Right.
I'd pick out somebody else personally. And Dave just reared back. Oh, he never hit him. Open hand. Boom, he knocked him down. That fake boy, huh? Stossel scrambled up. Whack, he hit him again. That fake boy, huh? Well, if Vince did it, he sure had to pay for it, because Stossel sued him. But isn't it funny? After calling David a fake and a fraud, he then sues him because he's a lethal weapon. Now, how can that be if he's a fake and a fraud? So a bit of hypocrisy there on Stossel's part.
That's true.
You know?
Who would you consider one of the toughest guys in the locker room from your era?
A lot of tough guys in the locker room. Wrestling-wise, Billy Robinson.
Shooter-wise, yeah.
Shooter-wise, Billy Robinson was, but yet Billy treated me again, another guy who guys feared. Billy never once, he never bothered me. Remember, guys, you say, oh, God, you got a Robinson tonight. I said, he don't bother me. Billy worked marvelous with me. Never had a problem with Billy Robinson.
How did you get involved with XFL?
When Vince's idea came up, I volunteered because I had broadcast for the NFL. I'd done 2 years with the Tampa Bay Bucks and a year with the Vikings.
Right.
And I said, Vince knew I could do football. And so I was governor at the time, and we cut the deal. And I turned him down initially, and my top security guy almost wet his pants because he heard what the offer was. Huh. And he was listening to me on the phone, and I said, tell him to stick it.
Wow.
You know, I said, come back with the offer doubled. I said, double it.
Right.
And of course we met in between. But I knew how the game's played. Vince comes with an initial offer, you don't take that one. You come back with another offer that's twice as much, and then you'll meet in between.
Right, exactly. That's business.
But my top security bodyguard, to this day, he says, how could you walk away? Because he offered me a lot of money.
Right.
He says, how do you say no? I said, easy. I got more, didn't I? He said, you sure did. He always said to me, he said, you got balls of steel.
Where do you think the XFL went wrong?
The XFL never went wrong. I found out 2 years later the NFL caused us to go. The NFL should have been charged with a crime.
Really?
Yep. I was golfing one day with a guy who was one of the top ad execs in Edina, Minnesota. We just happened to be together. And he asked me out on the golf course. He said, how'd you like the XFL? I said, I loved it. He said, are you aware what the NFL did to you? I said, no, what did they do? He said, oh, the NFL quietly put out to all advertisers that if you advertised on the XFL, you would not be on the NFL. That's antitrust.
Right, exactly. Now, why didn't Vince,
Vince probably didn't know about it either.
Wow.
This was done by the NFL underneath the table, because I always wondered, why did the NFL stay so quiet? They never said a word about us. And we would have been good for him. We weren't out to compete with him. We would have been a tremendous feeder system. Look at Maddox went to the NFL, Cortez the kicker, he hate me. Almost won a Super Bowl ring with Carolina.
Right.
Because he ended up, we would have been a tremendous feeder system for him. We were at a different time of the year. But no, this ad guy said, oh no, It came out totally that if you advertised on the XFL, you would not be on the NFL. That's why Vince lost all his advertisers.
Wow.
The NFL did it, and that's antitrust.
What made you sue Vince for royalties, for voiceovers and all that?
Well, because all the time that I was dealing with him after I started in Hollywood, I got royalties on Predator. I got royalties for everything I did in Hollywood. And every time we'd come to negotiations yearly, I'd say, Vince, how come I get royalties in Hollywood and I don't get them from you?
Right.
I said, I get royalties for everything I do out there, and I don't get nothing from you. Well, Vince said, I don't pay royalties. He'd have won the case. Nobody requires him to pay royalties. There's no law. But during Discovery, we found out certain people were getting royalties. Hogan, Cyndi Lauper, Mr. T, all the people that came from the real outside world, when they negotiated with Vince, they got royalties from Vince. And of course, our number one boy, Hogan, was getting them. Nobody else, though. That's how I won the case. It's called quantum merit. When you sit down and negotiate, there's a belief that the other side is telling you the truth about everything. Well, we proved in court Vince was not honest during the negotiations. The jury found for me completely, and when I went to work for WCW, I negotiated a royalty there, and all the jury did was take my negotiated royalty and apply it to Vince. And then I sued him quickly the second time. He took that to the Supreme Court and lost all the way. Then I immediately sued him again for future royalties. That he settled right away. So I get that rate, and now I'm in his computer. So every 4 months or whatever it is, he kicks a check out to me.
Wow.
And I call it my wrestling retirement.
That's awesome.
I'm the only wrestler that gets retirement. And it's because I took him to court in federal court.
Now, when this was going on, did Vince ever call you and try to settle with you one-on-one without
Nope.
lawyers? All lawyers and...
Never.
Okay.
Never.
When it was over, did he call you at all?
Yep.
And what was that conversation like?
He screamed and hollered at the phone at me, that's my money, that's my money. And I just held the phone away till he was done. When he was done, I brought the phone back in. I said, Vince, the jury said it was my money. The federal judge said it was my money. The appeals court said it was my money. And the Supreme Court of the United States said it was my money. Vince, I think you're of a minority opinion.
Wow. And then, obviously, you guys did business together again.
Oh,
right.
We get along actually better today than
Right.
we did when, I'll put it to you this way, and this is embarrassing. My biggest payday in wrestling was when I refereed SummerSlam as the governor.
Wow.
That's embarrassing, to make my biggest payday as a freaking referee.
I was going to ask you about that. We'll definitely come up to that.
But I won't tell you what I got.
I was going to ask you that if you want to say.
Nope.
Obviously.
Nope. But I did. I did with my appearance fee. I started the Jade Foundation, which is a charity named after my daughter, and I started my Roosevelt Scholarship Fund at my old high school in inner city Minneapolis. And now for 12 years, I have given out a $5,000 scholarship every year to a kid at Roosevelt High School where I went to school.
That's awesome. We're going to let you plug everything and talk all about that coming up. I just want to...
No. I just wanted to say that's what that refereeing my appearance did.
That's what you do with it? That's all. That's all.
Yep.
It's generous. Did any of the boys ever thank you for opening up, I guess, a new source of revenue for them after that happened?
What
with
source
the,
of
with
revenue?
the royalties?
They get them now?
Oh yeah, everyone's getting royalties.
No,
now.
never. No one's ever thanked me.
Wow, that's crazy. You once said in
But I bet they don't get the royalty rate I get.
Probably not. They don't have a good lawyer. You once said that the steroids in wrestling sometimes are a necessity. Can you elaborate?
They work you so hard. My God, when you're wrestling 28 days a month and people see you on television and you weigh 260 pounds of solid muscle, if you didn't have the juice, you'd show up weighing about 220. And people go, who's this guy? They force you to use them. The business itself, it's so hard. The injuries, the pounding, the night after night, it almost forces you to use them.
What are your personal thoughts on the juice or using steroids?
The what?
Steroids. What are your...
Well, we never knew the long-term effects of them, but there sure has been a generation of guys that are dead.
Right.
The generation right after me. I never took much. I used to only I'd take one cycle of testosterone a year, and that's in your body already. You're just giving yourself an overabundance, and then at the end you give yourself a shot of gonadotropin because your body's a natural check and balance. And if you're getting an outside source of testosterone, your body will start to cease to produce its own. So you need the gonadotropin to kick your body back in when you go off again. And I only did 1 cc every week. That ain't nothing. That's why today I'm still healthy.
Right.
Because I never abused. I never took orals. None of that stuff. Most guys were on orals all the time, and then they'd take the shots. Was when they'd say, "Well, yeah, now I'm on."
In the 80s, how big was drug use among the boys in the dressing rooms?
Huge.
We've done interviews with pretty much everybody, and Piper was telling us about, uppers to, stay up, downers to go to sleep, and
I never had to do that. I never took no pills like that at all. Uppers and downers and all that. No.
pain pills, somas, and all that stuff.
No, I never did any of that.
Right. Okay, but you saw it was prevalent back in the day, in the 80s,
Well, they threw the doc in jail.
Right, sorry.
I don't have to talk about it. I want to know, how did Hogan get out of testifying in that? That's what I'd like to know. How did he get out of having to testify in that?
What are your thoughts on that trial?
I don't know. I just thought the doc was a bit of a scapegoat. He ended up taking the blunt of the heat for it and went to jail for it. And what were we supposed to believe? Hogan didn't take him? Hell, I bought him from Hogan. Hogan dealt him.
Wow.
He didn't just take him, he dealt him. Because I bought from him. I bought testosterone from Hogan.
Right. It's a big story. I want to talk more about wrestling. We'll get back into some other behind-the-scenes stories coming up. How did you wind up in WCW?
I had an agent, and they pursued me after I left the WWF.
What was the difference between WCW and WWE, or WWF at the time, structurally, with the organization?
I don't know. I didn't get into all that. I had my deal, and I had my money, and they paid me a great deal of it, and I went there and did my job.
You were just pretty much going in there, getting paid, and doing your job?
Absolutely.
Okay. What are your thoughts on some of the top guys there at the time when you were announcing, like Sting, Lex Luger, the Steiners?
Well, they all ended up with Vince, so they were obviously all good talent. They had good talent there, too. Their best talent they had was Austin. And they didn't use him right. Look what Vince did with him.
Exactly.
Vince made him bigger than Hogan.
Without a doubt.
For a period.
Some accused you when working for WCW that you were just phoning it in. What are your thoughts on that?
Phoning what in?
They say that you weren't really, I guess, playing up your best mic skills, and obviously...
Who's they?
Maybe journalists, Dave Meltzer, guys like that.
What the hell does Meltzer know? A little puke.
I'm not saying Dave in particular, so...
Well, no,
the critics. I'm not saying Dave Meltzer's name.
Maybe it was because WCW didn't have as good a co-anchors with me. Remember, it's a team thing.
Right.
So maybe theirs weren't as good as me and Vince. Maybe the chemistry... Well, like I said, I wasn't as good because they gave me Jim Ross. He sucked. And you know why? He wouldn't put me over. He'd ignore me. I'd say something outrageous and Ross would just ignore me. He wouldn't work with me.
Jim Ross, I'm going to read a quote. He said, I wanted JR and the body to be perfect, but we simply weren't. I'll take responsibility for that one. What are your thoughts on that quote from Jim Ross? He did take responsibility for, I guess, not meshing well with you.
He's an honest man then. You just told me that?
Yes.
I have a new outlook on Jim Ross then, just from that statement, because he is absolutely correct.
Yeah, that's what he said.
He is absolutely correct.
Huh. He also
for some reason, he didn't want to mesh with me.
And what you said earlier on. Well, he says again, it's exactly what you said earlier on. He said in an interview that he was very bitter, and he was working a lot more than you and getting paid half of what you made. And obviously you sensed that from him, so...
But is that my fault?
Right.
If he's going to blame somebody, blame management. Don't blame me. I'm going to get the best deal I can get, just as I would expect him to do the same. Jim Ross is being very honest there. I'm very impressed.
Yeah.
I'm very impressed that he would be that honest. Yeah, no, he's absolutely correct, everything he said there.
Okay. Bill Watts. Memories of when Bill Watts came.
What a nightmare. Bill Watts, the business had passed him by. Bill Watts couldn't figure out that the business was now television, not house shows. That the key to the business was TV, because Watts hated me because he could not figure out how they could pay an announcer like they were paying me. And it showed me he didn't understand the business. It's television ratings.
Did you see the bulliness of Bill Watts and how he worked with the boys and stuff like that? All right. Did you have any experiences with Bill Watts from back in the day? Obviously, you didn't work Mid-South Territory.
I only worked with Bill Watts at WCW, and it was a freaking nightmare.
Give us some details on working with Bill Watts.
Can't remember, don't want to remember. Why would I? I have good memories. I don't hold on to bad ones, but it was a nightmare. I hated it. That might have been a reason, too, why if they said my announcing wasn't as good.
You weren't happy at the...
Yeah, when he came in, the guy was insulting to me. And then he wanted to buy out my contract for like 30%.
I remember all that.
I looked at him, I says, 30, 90 will work. 30? Are you kidding me? Oh yeah, he wanted to buy me out and get rid of me for 30% on the deal I signed. I said, give me 90, I'll leave.
Right. That's crazy. Memories of Eric Bischoff when Eric came into the company.
He sucked. I helped him get the job, and then he backstabbed me.
In what aspect?
He brought it. I went out and badmouthed Hogan, and he didn't tell me Hogan was coming in.
Wow.
And then I think him and Hogan, because I was still under contract for 3 more months, and they never used me. They just left me at home and paid me.
I remember that.
Yeah, so it was him and Hogan.
So it was all political.
Sure,
Okay.
Totally. And he backstabbed me because I helped him get the top job there. I supported him because he worked me. He pretended he was my friend. Eric Bischoff's a sleaze, in my opinion.
How did you help him get the job?
I put him over. I told people he'd be a good man to do it. I told the people there at WCW and the Turner people.
How were you familiar with him? That's what I'm saying.
Because he came and buttered me up.
Gotcha.
He used me.
Right.
And then after I did it for him and he went and got Hogan, well, then I was out the door, I guess.
Did Vince call you at all during the time in WCW to ask you to come back?
Nope.
No? Okay.
Remember, Vince has a big ego, too.
Right, exactly. So, two Tigers going at it. Now, after WCW, what were your plans? Obviously, politics came on.
Yeah.
And how did you get involved with politics?
Just ran for mayor of Brooklyn Park. You know, my local hometown, we got in a dispute with the city, and we were voted down when 450 of us signed a petition, and I thought, this is democracy, wait a minute. And I got more involved, and one day I looked at the 25-year incumbent mayor, and I said, you're going to make me run against you, aren't you? And his partner up on the city council laughed and said, you can't win. Well, I walked out that night knowing I was running for mayor.
Wow.
And I won 67% to 33%.
How did you finance everything, just with wrestling money? And
I didn't finance anything.
Everything.
I've never spent money to get elected. When I ran for governor, you know how much money I raised to become governor of Minnesota? $300 grand.
wow.
The Dems and Repubs that year combined spent $12 million. I'm the only politician or statesman, I call myself. You find another one in the last 50 years, anyone, who made more money doing the job than they spent to get it.
How would you compare wrestling politics to real politics?
They're all the same. In fact, when I taught at Harvard, one of my classes was how pro wrestling prepares you for politics.
It's very similar, in a way. Not in all aspects, but... you also worked a little bit, I want to go back to WWF. Recently you worked for SummerSlam. How did that come into play?
Which one? The one when I refereed?
Oh yeah, when you refereed.
Vince, I was the hottest commodity out there. The reason... I'll tell you why I did it for Vince too. I did it to nail WCW and Hogan. Because when I won governor, Vince treated it phenomenal. WCW made a mockery of it.
It's true.
Yeah. And so I thought, I'll get you back. So Vince offered, and I said, you're damn right, I'll do it for you, Vince. Because I wanted to stick it to Hogan and the WCW for making a mockery out of a serious thing I did. Something where they should have saluted me as being a pro wrestler who rose to the rank of governor, and yet they made a mockery of the whole thing, him and Bischoff. So that's why I went back and did the thing for Vince. I thought if I can trump him again with the WWF, I'll stick it to the WCW and Bischoff and Hogan, and I think I did a good job of it.
Is it true they changed the finish from Triple H going over because they didn't want you raising the heel's hand or something like that?
No.
Okay.
No.
There's
nothing. If they did, I didn't know about it.
Right. What was Vince like to work with during that time?
Fine.
Same old pure
Better.
business? Better?
He had to call me governor.
Right.
And he's in my state. He better be.
You once said that wrestling was in the dark ages. Do you still believe that?
Yeah, there's no union. Until they get now it's fashionable to break unions, but wrestling will always be in the dark ages until the boys get a union and get some benefits and get health care and get retirement. That's what bothers me. You got guys we're not financial planners. You got guys that give 30 years to the business, and when it's all over, they get nothing back. Nothing. I mean, if they even got a check for $500 a month in retirement, it'd be huge. I can't tell you how many old wrestlers I've seen that are broke today after giving 30 years, their whole lives to this business. And until that changes, it'll always be the dark ages.
Did you know that, I don't know if you're familiar with Raven, Scott Levy, he worked in WCW when you were there. He tried to, start something up a couple years ago, and he went to court and got thrown out, so, about unionizing the business. I didn't know if you're familiar with that case.
No, I didn't.
Okay. When you came back to WWE to host Raw, how did that come about?
It was to help promote my conspiracy theory show, because Vince was doing that, and that was kind of the trade-off. Naturally, I got paid, but that was the trade, and he flew me in and out in a private jet.
Right.
And but that was part of the trade-off, that my show would get promoted, and then I'd do that, and it was phenomenal. Vince and I back on the mic.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what are your...
I loved it, and I only blew one line though that I wish I could do again.
Which was that?
Vince kept bragging about being a billionaire, and it was one of them where you thought of it later. I wished I'd have looked at him and said, "Really? Boy, that destroys a concept I always had, Vince. I always thought you had to be smart to have money."
That's awesome.
Which would have worked great on the live broadcast.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the great thing I'll give about Vinny. Here's the other thing that made it so great for me. I could insult him and do anything I wanted to him on the air, and he was always professional about it. Who has that opportunity where you can diss the boss on national TV and he don't do nothing about it? In fact, he likes it because he knows it sells. And that's what I love about Vince. He'll sacrifice, if it's for the business, because who did more dissing of Vince than me?
Right, nobody. It's
nobody.
True. It's totally
and you
true.
can do that to your boss. What boss will ever let you do that? Vince will. No, I respect Vince a lot, in a great deal in a lot of ways.
Did you ever get the bug to come back at all, full time or even semi-regular?
Nope.
No.
But I will tell you today, I'll come back tomorrow if he puts the decimal point in the right spot. Not that I'm hurting.
Right.
I don't need it. And I just say that because I say, you'll always work if the decimal point's in the right place. So you can take that message back. Vince could have me back tomorrow if he puts the decimal point in the right place.
That'd be awesome, too.
But I don't think I'd be too good today.
Why is that?
The business has changed too much.
As far as?
The whole concept of it.
Too much entertainment?
I hate the interviews. Hate them. In my day...
Too much comedy?
No.
Just the way the script...
No, in my day, they're all in the ring now, where they all look at each other.
Right.
In my day, you didn't see each other till the ring. You did all the interviews with Gene, and people waited then to see the big final confrontation. Now it's all done right in the ring. They all yak back and forth, face to face. I hate it.
It kind of exposes the business.
I hate it. I hate it.
I agree.
I liked it better when you had Little Mean Gene there, or whoever else would be doing it.
Right.
And much better. And then you don't see the big confrontation till that night, finally in the ring.
Right.
Now it's all done. Oh, they stand there, and then the big lights go off, and the guy comes walking down the freaking runway. It's so predictable.
So you like the old school stuff?
The interview ends way better. Plus, it's all scripted today on interviews. In my day, it was the wrestler who ad-libbed.
And it makes it more meaningful.
Well, what it does, it gives you the ability of having many more minds involved instead of... And we never had writers. Who's going to write for me?
Right.
What writer can write for Jesse the Body? I remember the first time a Saturday Night Main Event. We got there, I sat down, Dick Ebersol of NBC comes up and hands me this big, thick folder. I open it up. Vince says this. Jesse says this. I looked, I said, Dick, come here. I said, what the F is this?
Huh.
He goes, that's your script. And here's exactly what I said to him. I said, Dick, 1 year ago, NBC didn't give a rat's ass about wrestling. I said, you're going to now tell me you got some writer who can write for me? Dick Ebersol sat there a minute and said, ignore it. Do what you want. I said, thank you. Just tell me what you want over.
Right.
Just tell me where we're going. Leave the rest to me.
And it worked.
Yep.
Without
And
a
that's
doubt.
what I hate about it today.
Looking back,
They won't allow the wrestlers to create themselves, which in my day we created ourselves.
I understand totally, 100%. So, how did the new guys and the younger guys treat you when you came back to work TV and that pay-per-view?
Wonderful.
Everybody marking out for you?
Oh, they were so respectful. I love the young guys today. Like I said, all of them, they're so respectful to me. The only thing I don't like about it is that I get the respect because I'm now an old guy.
Right.
I trade it all in to be 25 again. I'd give the respect back and disrespect me if I could go back in time and be 25 again. No, but I can't tell you how respectful the new wrestlers are. They're wonderful, wonderful young people who work extremely hard at their trade, and they for what they do a great job with it. I may not like all of it, but that's just my personal opinion. That's all. It's no reflection upon them or the performance they do because they're not in control of it. Vince is.
Do you think that when you're around, Vince has a sense of insecurity at all?
Yeah.
Right.
Because he knows I'm one guy that'll tell him to shove it.
Right. Are you surprised that Hulk Hogan is still in the business full time?
Yeah.
And do you find it sad?
Yeah, I find it pathetic. With the amount of money he's made and that he hasn't always done his TV shows and his movies, but geez, why would you still be climbing into a ring or doing things like that at his age with the amount of money he made? But then again, they just gave me Linda's book.
Right.
And I haven't read it yet, but I imagine maybe now he has to.
Divorce.
I don't know, but I'm sure Linda did pretty well in that divorce.
Without a
I
doubt.
don't think she's hurting today. And, but yeah, I really do, because I think, because Hulk Hogan has become what we all hated. When we were all young, we couldn't stand these old guys that were so far over the hill, and yet you had to put them over. And now he's become the very thing that
Right.
we all hated before. He has now become that. And you'd think he'd see it. You'd think he'd realize, wait a minute, I'm in the position that so-and-so was back when I was 25 or 30.
It's time to pass the torch and give the younger guys a rub. All right. What are your thoughts on Ric Flair? Do you,
Oh, one of the greatest of all time. There's no doubt about it. There's only one Ric Flair. There'll probably never only be one Ric Flair. But I laughed when I was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2004. I looked at Rick. I said, Rick, how can I be going into the Hall of Fame ahead of you? And the reason, Rick was still wrestling. He can't go in. You got to wait till you're retired. And so it tells you, and Rick's been there too long too, but I think financially he has to, because he's
right.
gotten in, Ric Flair's Ric Flair.
His lifestyle.
His lifestyle.
Do you think Rick could ever be, a successful politician in North Carolina?
No.
No?
Because he came to me.
Really?
Him and Okerlund came to me when I was governor. And Rick was going to run for governor of North Carolina. And I said to Rick, well, Rick, the only thing I can tell you is this game is much more harsh and much dirtier than wrestling ever was. And I said, if you have any skeletons in the closet, I said, you better expose them beforehand. Because I said, if they find out after, you're dead. And Rick admitted to me some astronomical number. He said, well, I've had like 143 speeding tickets. I looked at him and said, you can't be governor, you can't run, they'll kill you.
Right.
I said, that's total disregard for the law. And as governor, you're the head law enforcement officer of the state. I said, you can't run, Rick. And he believed me, and he didn't do it. But when I heard he had this astronomical amount of speeding tickets, and that's all in the record, I thought your political opponent will kill you with that. I said, you can't run like that. You have to blame your past for it. You can't have... The thing I've learned about politics is expose your skeletons before you run. Then they're not an issue. But in the case of something like that, you can't run from that.
Are you surprised at all the money that Linda McMahon has spent on her campaign?
No, look at what all the others do, too.
Right. Okay. What about, are you surprised?
You give me the money Linda McMahon spent, and I'll be the president. There's a quote for you. Let Vince give me that money, and I'll be the next president of the United States for that amount of money.
Were you surprised that Obama and Hillary campaigned on WWE TV?
They did?
Yeah.
No. Wrestling's very popular.
Okay.
I don't watch wrestling, so a lot of things that have happened lately is news to me.
Why do you think that you're the only pro wrestler to ever turn politician?
I don't know. And I didn't do it by design. I kind of just fell into it.
Right. Okay. You were very protective of your family during your time as governor. Are you surprised that I guess Hulk Hogan has put his family out there in the way he has?
I would never put my family on a reality show. And in fact, if you listen to Ozzy and Sharon Osbourne today, they said it was a major mistake.
Right. Even
though I'm sure they made a ton of money. Yeah. But I've learned Hogan will prostitute himself for anything.
Okay.
I wouldn't do it. I would never, ever do that to my family, put them out like that Although this year's conspiracy theory, my son's with me on the TV. He's one of my investigators.
You want to talk about that now? Let's get
Yeah, it's our first show of the season's November 7th, 10 Eastern, 9 Central. We did 8 of them, but they're only going to allow 7. They won't allow the one on the TSA.
Why is that? Just because too much
Don't ask me. It comes from the network.
Wow. And what network can people watch this on?
True TV.
Okay.
Which is part of the Turner.
Right.
TNT and TBS, True TV.
Okay. Do you want to talk more about the show as far as what you have coming up this season?
Oh, we got some great ones. We do probably the most bizarre ones we've done yet, and I got another new member to my team. His name is Sean Stone, graduate of Princeton. He's Oliver Stone's son.
Big name right there.
And a smart kid.
Right.
And let me put it this way, the acorn don't fall far from the tree.
Your very first book, you want to talk about your book?
This is my first book.
No, I'm saying no.
Oh.
I know you've done other. I'm just saying I want to talk about your books. No,
Yeah, sure. Well, it's called Democrats and Republicans, No More Gangs in Government, and it's a book that exposes the two political parties for the frauds that they are. They've created a system that's based completely upon bribery. They're ruining our country because they have no excuse. They've been in charge for 150 years. And I'm urging people that the only way to save our country is to destroy these political parties. We must have a no-party system in which to survive. In my chapter 2, I cover 3 of my most important allies who agree with me. They're pretty important people, I think. George Washington, the father of our country, Thomas Jefferson, and John Adams all warned us that if political parties take over the country, the great country could fall. And we're falling. And they're at fault.
And when's this book come out?
See, they're like gangs. It's out now.
Oh yeah, it's out now.
They're like gangs. Having been in an outlaw motorcycle club, I know what the structure is. Allegiance is first to the gang. It's second to how the gang makes money. And then us, the people, might be third. But that's what these political parties, their main allegiance is to the party first, not the country. And then it's allegiance to the corporations now that foot the bill, not the country. And people better wake up to that or we're heading down a very sad road in America.
And do you have a website too where people directly go to buy the book, or is it just
not on my website. You can go to Skyhorse Publishing. My personal website, which I don't do, my son does it for me, is weaintgottimetobleed.com,
right.
All one word. And they can go to that Skyhorse's website, Skyhorse Publishing, or it's in every outlet, all the bookstores and the stuff, on the internet and all that. You can get the book's not hard to get.
Okay. What other projects are you working on too?
Well, like I said, conspiracy theory comes on. I did the book, so really nothing right now. Nothing right now.
A lot of relaxation.
I'm getting ready to go to Mexico again to disappear for the winter. And
how dangerous is it in Mexico? Obviously, we're talking off camera.
Not where I'm at.
You have neighbors, or you have no
I
neighbors?
have a few, but I live an hour from pavement and an hour from electricity. I have electricity because my house is completely solar. I surf, I paddle surf, I ride ATVs, I scuba dive. I love the battle that takes place between two ecosystems that collide. The ocean meets the desert.
Right.
I love the Mexican people. I love the lifestyle because down there where I live, people are more worried about eating the next day as opposed to what the stock market's doing. And in a way, I find that very refreshing.
More laid back.
And nobody knows me.
That's crazy.
And right now, I really enjoy that.
Right.
And I could tell you this, the day may come where I move to Mexico permanently and you'll never hear from me again.
Looking back at your wrestling career, what is, I guess, some of your proudest moments?
Selling out Madison Square Garden, being the first person that introduced an agent into the WWF, doing the first WrestleMania, being the heart and soul of Saturday night's main event. Those are all pretty good.
Any regrets?
Regrets? No, not really. I can't see where I did anything that I'd want to do over again. You know, that I thought that I mussed up so bad. I guess maybe my only regret was being bullheaded, but then again, I can't say that's a regret because I won't sell my soul. And when Vince wouldn't let me do it in my own video game and fired me because he was portraying to the world that he owned us all, and he shouldn't have. He should have said, I own everybody but Jesse Ventura.
Would you like to be in the WWE Hall of Fame one day?
I already am.
Okay.
2004.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I went there with that. That was the same year I was teaching at Harvard. I had to come down from Harvard.
Okay.
There's another great thing I'm proud of. I only went to high school, and yet I'm a professor at Harvard, and I'm probably the only wrestler who ever has been a professor at Harvard. Although they did have the one kid that I know, my good friend, who went to school at Harvard.
Who's that, Chris?
Lewinsky.
Yeah, Chris.
Yeah.
The brain trauma and all that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on, the study right now, bumping and all that with the dangers and...
I think that it's long overdue. It's very dangerous. I mean, when you get a concussion, that's a bruise to the brain. And the brain, other than your heart, those are the two most important things in any human body.
What is your take on the entire Chris Benoit tragedy?
Sad.
All right. Did you know Chris at all?
Yeah.
From WCW days?
No, from WWF.
Okay, you were there when, okay.
Yeah, no, very sad. Good performer and sad.
What is your theory?
I don't have a theory. I wouldn't even want to speculate.
Okay.
You know, I only know what I read about. And it was a tragedy of tragedies that unfortunately happened.
Does it bother you at all that WWE at the time sometimes don't include you in some video games and they take out your commentary?
Yeah.
What is your feeling?
But I think they've restored most of it. I think they got too much heat when they started, because Vince started doing that as soon as I won the court case, and I think he got a whole bunch of trouble for it because people said, what the hell is this? This ain't original.
Right.
Where's Jesse? And so he put it all back in now.
Right.
And so, it bothers me that I had to go to court with him. I shouldn't have had to. If you're treated fairly, you should not have to. You know, that bothers me, that I had to go to all that trouble.
Do you feel that blading should be banned from wrestling? Or you think it serves a purpose?
No. As long as they're safe, and everyone's been checked for AIDS and all that stuff, and that there can be no problems that way, it's up to the individual, if they want to do it or not.
What are some of the best rib stories that you might have seen or partaken in? Obviously, Mr. Fuji was known as one of the biggest ribbers out there.
I'm not the person to ask on that. I'm the loner.
Okay.
I didn't run around doing ribs on people. I probably heard a few, but, unless I was there and saw them, it's just hearsay. So it's better to go to the source, not me.
Favorite road stories?
Oh, favorite road stories. I don't think there was anything that could be favorite on the road.
Right. Do you consider yourself bitter towards the business at all? Or?
Bitter, no.
Okay.
It was just brutal. On my first new car, I put 128,000 miles on it in 2 years.
Wow.
And that included carpooling.
Right.
I guess I'll give you a story. My first new car, Mercury Cougar, 1975, I put 128,000 on it, but odometer zone didn't have six figures in. So when I traded it in, I wasn't deceitful. The guy said, is the mileage accurate? I went, yeah. Who's going to believe it flipped over?
Right.
So I traded in a car which would have been right, 2 years old with 28,000. Perfect. Only thing, there was a 1 in front of it.
We were talking off camera about your...
Only that I have metal in my body. They treat me like a criminal, and so I went to court under my Fourth Amendment rights, reasonable search and seizure, and that the judge threw it out and said she didn't have jurisdiction. Well, it's a constitutional question, and unfortunately that's what they do at all TSA or Homeland Security. They won't hear the case. So what people out there need to realize, when you go to any airport in America, anyone, You are not protected by the Constitution. You are not protected by the Bill of Rights, and there's nowhere you can go to seek redress. And during my hearing, the judge asked me, Governor, can you cite a time you were abused at the airport? And my attorney stepped in and said, the governor can't do that because TSA rules fall under national security. We're not allowed to know. So in other words, because we are not allowed to know the rules, how can you know if you're being abused? So they can do anything they want to. And where in the Constitution does it say airports are immune from the Constitution and the Bill of Rights? It does not. And people should be outraged over that.
And at a protest now, you only travel by train, obviously.
Well, Janet Napolitano, the head of Homeland Security, made the statement at the airline flying, she said, if you don't like it, don't fly. Okay, I'm not flying now. I'm not saying I'm going to bust them.
Right.
But I bet you I used to fly to the tune of about $25,000 a year.
Do you feel you ever go back to that, or you're definitely
I
not?
will never fly again unless I'm allowed to get on a plane with dignity and not be treated like a criminal. Imagine a governor, a mayor, an honorably discharged Navy veteran, and just because I have metal in my body, I'm treated like a criminal. It even happened when I was governor. And the fun part was, while the kid's doing it, I looked at him and I said, when does common sense enter into this? He said, what do you mean? I said, you see the two guys over there with suits? He goes, yeah. I said, they're carrying 9mm. They're getting on the plane with me. And you're frisking me? I'm their boss. All I got to do is ask them for the gun and they give it to me.
Right, right.
And you're frisking me. How sick is that?
It's ridiculous.
Ridiculous, exactly. And it's just theater security anyway.
Right, it's not the real deal. Is there anything you want to say to your wrestling fans out there, or fans in general? It doesn't have to be wrestling fans, fans of Jesse Ventura that you never had a chance to say to?
Well, I just say to them, I appreciate it. I appreciate them being fans, be it wrestling or anything else I've done. I appreciate their support. I hope I've lived up to every expectation they would expect out of me, but remember, I'm only human too. And I'm not done yet, maybe, because I did make the statement. I said that if I won't spend any money, but I said if there were a grassroots swell, if they got me on the ballot in all 50 states, and if they guaranteed me I could be in the debates, I'll run for president in 2016. And for all you wrestling fans out there, wouldn't it be neat to see a wrestler in the White House?
Without a doubt. Well, Jesse...
So now the ball's in your court.
I'd vote for you.
Well, no, not vote.
Right.
You got to get me on the ballot.
Right, obviously.
In all 50 states. So the ball is out there. If the people... See, the reason I say that is this. The people of this country got to show me something now. They got to show me it's worth it for me to put my ass on the line again. And that's the way they could do it. If they can accomplish that, I'll put my ass on the line again.
I want to thank you for being here today. It was an incredible interview.
My pleasure.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks.
Thank
Okay.
you.
TitleMatchNetwork.com